Welcome, everybody. Good morning. Here we are at our October 17 meeting of the County Board. And as we have been since March, really, for the safety of our staff and residents during COVID-19 pandemic, we are continuing to hold our meetings by electronic means. And each time we do this, the whole board needs to vote on a resolution finding the need to conduct our meeting, and in this case, our October 17, 2020 County Board meeting as continued electronically. And I will not, it's a long resolution. I won't read the whole thing, but I move that whereas on March 12, 2020, Governor of Virginia declared a state of emergency in Virginia in response to the spread of the novel coronavirus or COVID-19, a communicable disease of public health threat, as so declared by the State Health Commissioner on February 7, 2020. And there are a number of whereases. And then we say that it is to be resolved that the County Board of Arlington County, Virginia finds the nature of the declared emergency makes it both impracticable and unsafe for the board to assemble in a single location on October 17, 2020 to discuss and transact the business of the county. Also says this is important business to do. And that is a summary of the resolution. Could I have a second, please?
Second.
All right, motion has been moved and seconded. Thank you very much, colleagues. And we will now vote. All in favor, please say aye. I'm getting some feedback, so there's somebody that needs to maybe mute their phone. Mr. Carantonis.
Aye.
Mr. DeFerranti.
Aye.
Ms. Crystal.
Aye.
Mr. Dorsey.
Aye.
Ms. Garvey says yes as well. All right, motion passes 5-0. So we are now into our October 17, 2020 meeting electronically and virtually for everybody's safety. And I think that brings us to our public comment on non-agenda items. Madam Clerk, how many speakers do we have this morning?
Madam Chair, we have 9 speakers this morning.
Okay, that's great. Will you please call the speakers? I will give you a little bit of introduction first. So everybody who, while you're waiting to speak, some of you are on the phone, some of you by computer, I think, please keep your phones and your devices muted until you are called. The moderator can mute you, but cannot unmute you. So if you're calling in, you have to, by phone, you have to press *6 to unmute. And of course, if you're on your computer browser, you click that little microphone icon on the toolbar. Board members are able to hear you. We can't not see you. And please, if you're using 2 different devices, one to speak in and one to watch, please make sure you turn off the sound on any of those other devices. Otherwise, you're going to get a lot of feedback and it'll be hard to understand you. We have the time limit, of course, and our clerk is keeping track of the time. We do limit it just to make sure that everybody gets a chance to speak and we get the chance to get to our business today. But please do bring your remarks to a conclusion when you hear that timer go if you've not already finished. When you're done speaking, you can leave the call and you can continue to participate, of course, watching the meeting via our live stream online, our cable channels, Comcast 25 and 1085, or on Verizon Fios 39 and 40. I believe we have a Spanish interpreter with us today on the line for public comment, this portion of the meeting, if that's necessary. Is the interpreter here? And if so, would you please introduce yourself en español, por favor?
Buenos días a todos. Voy a ser la intérprete de español en esta mañana. Gracias.
Thank you very much. Nice to have you back. In keeping with our long-standing rule, we will only hear from one person per topic for 2 minutes during the public comment period. And I think we are now ready, Madam Clerk, to please call the first 2 public comment speakers.
Okay, our first public speaker is Kyle Cartson, followed by Curtis Bell. And I just need 1 moment, Miss Kyle, just to get our timer up, excuse me. Okay, Kyle Cartson.
You might need to unmute yourself. We can't hear you.
Okay, we will circle back to Kyle Cardston.
Yeah. we
Curtis
go to-
Bell is next, but he is having some technical problems and I'm helping him out. So we will
Okay.
circle back to him as well.
Okay.
Monica Morin,
Mhm.
followed by Stephanie Burns.
Good morning. My name is Monica Morin, Arlington resident since 2013. I am here to talk about affordable housing. I am enrolled in the Arlington Neighborhood College program. Last month, my landlord raised the rent 20%. As a first step, I called the housing office for advice. I mentioned that I was on waitlist for affordable units and was told waitlists are all 5 years long and I shouldn't rely on them. He never gave me his name. October 9th, I signed a lease for a studio in DC because I needed to have new housing secured. October 12th, I was horrified to receive not one, but 2 emails from different companies that I was next for a committed affordable studio in Arlington. One building contacted me. I joined its waitlist in September. When I called them back to say I had just signed a lease, they got off the phone with me as quickly as possible. I emailed about staying on the waitlist and maybe qualifying for a unit after my new lease in DC goes month to month, and their policy is that once they contact you, you are removed from the waitlist. I was told to reapply. Another building under different management emailed me. I joined its waitlist in April. I called them. The office was unable to answer my questions on the 12th. They took a message and have not called me back. I am heartbroken to be moving away from my friends and neighbors. Why is there no rent control when so many concessions have been given to corporations? Why are the waitlists opaque and maintained separately at each building? I had no way of knowing I was high on 2 waitlists. I signed a lease for an apartment that leaves me rent burdened. I implore the county board to re-examine these waitlist systems. Do more for affordable housing, add rent control. I'm being forced out of Arlington because of lack of oversight on and visibility into affordable housing, along with the lack of rent control. Do not force the working class to live in substandard housing or have commutes over 60 minutes. My only nearby family is my grandfather, buried in Arlington National Cemetery. I'm the 2019 WABA Volunteer of the Year, which includes time I spent volunteering at open houses and bike rides in Arlington County. You know, the more people who live far away, the more vehicles travel, the more miles traveled by car, the more people die in traffic, along with polluting the earth. Part of a healthy economy is space for those at all income levels.
Thank you very much, Ms. Moore. We make comments at the end, and I'm very sorry you've had to leave, and we'll make some comments.
Maybe, Madam Chair, we could hear from Mrs. Morin which part of the county experienced a 20% increase in rent? Where was that?
I don't know if Ms. Morin's still on.
I am on.
Okay.
I have. I can answer. Am I supposed to keep talking and answer your question?
Oh, no, you're fine. Yeah, no, thank you. Actually, we don't usually go back and forth. What I was going to do, we'll come at the end. Ms. Morin, if you would stay on the line and make sure we have your email so that we can get back to you and get a little more information, because we do want to look into this. All right?
Okay.
Thank you very much. And our clerk, I think, can get back with you and make sure we've got your contact information. Okay? Thank you. Yeah, I understand. You may not want to say publicly where you're living. I get that. So we'll check it offline. Thank you. Can we take our next speaker now?
Okay, our next speaker is Curtis Bell. I have him on my phone. Okay, Mr. Bell, are you there?
I'm here. I'm ready.
Okay, and you can
Tell me when to start.
You can start now, sir.
Okay. I'm calling because of the excess traffic on Morecambe Lane. Even with COVID, it's still very bad. The other night, I'm walking the dog and a car goes down at 67 miles an hour. The other morning, a car goes down at 52 miles per hour. Why couldn't they put a restriction on entering Morecambe Lane in the morning, 5 to 7, and entering from Spout Run and entering Morecambe Lane from Dominion Route 29 in the morning, 7 to 9 a.m. It's the rush hour, morning and evening are the worst. Why can't the traffic go simply past the commercial properties on Spout Run and make a right and go out Dominion Highway? It imposes a terrible burden on the houses that live on Morecambe Lane. And when the Dorothy Ham School goes from 600 students to 1,100 students. They're going to have a lot of people walking. I have seen people nearly get hit trying to cross the street. 2 automobile accidents have been hit by speeding cars, and you're not closing Lorcom Lane. I'm not asking that. You don't need enabling legislation. You could put in speed bumps. Something's got to be done about the excess traffic on Lorcom Lane. They put counters from time to time, but they ought to restrict it. Do not enter in the evenings from the north, going south on Lorcom Lane, and do not enter in the in the mornings. Do not enter from the top, and in the evenings, do not enter at the bottom.
Okay.
Before the South Run.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Thank you. Next speaker?
Our next speaker is Stephanie Burns, followed by Amy DeRoe.
Great, thank you. Good morning to members of the county board and county staff. I live in Arlington, and our community has been looking forward to plans for Jenny Dean Park. According to the county's website, construction on Jenny Dean Park was supposed to begin early this year, but we're already in October, and I just don't see any construction happening. At last month's county board meeting, we were told that construction would begin in a few weeks, but it has been a month, and I just don't see anything happening. What is holding up this project, and could we get a more precise estimate for when construction will begin? Thank you.
Thank you. We can try. We will ask our staff when we get here. Okay, next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Amy DeRoe, followed by Marcus Kendrick.
Good morning. I'm Amy DeRoe, and our family has lived on the 1000 block of North Edgewood Street for 30 years. This block is experiencing an extraordinary level of new construction, and we anticipate 5 new homes will be built over the coming year. I would like to highlight a few comments made in a recent letter to the county board. First, we are not opposed to new development if done with forethought and consideration of others. Zoning changes over time now allow for homes to be built much closer to property lines. New home going up next to us is uncomfortably close and huge. Besides aesthetics, we are concerned about fire safety. Next, all the trees on the lot next to us were removed. It would be devastating if the same thing happened on the other 4 lots of this block. Could we be proactive and request a county arborist work with developers before they cut down these mature trees, which are much needed for shade, filtering, and runoff protection? Over the next year, our street will be clogged with trucks, constant deliveries, and lots of dust and dirt, depriving us of calmness when we are spending so much time living and working in our homes due to COVID. Please help us by limiting the number of demolitions and rebuilds permitted at any one time on one block. All of this construction will make parking on an already crowded street very difficult to navigate. We've been observing some close calls with other vehicles and power lines. For these reasons, we request frequent unscheduled county visits and inspections to ensure contractors are complying with county codes and operating in the best interest of all over the life of the projects. We will need the county's timely help to address concerns as they arise. Thanks for listening to my concerns, and I look forward to hearing what the county board can do to address them.
Thank you. Thank you. And we'll get to the comments just as soon as we get to our last speaker. Thank you. We'll circle back.
Our next speaker is Marcus Kendrick, followed by Rose Espinoa. Marcus Kendrick. Be sure to unmute *6 or the microphone button. Okay, we will circle back. We will go now to Rose Espinoa, followed by Mary Glass.
Hi, my name is Rose Espinoa. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. There's quite an echo. If you've got another device on, could you mute one of them?
I only have one device on.
Oh, yeah, you sound just fine now. Thank you. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Rosa Spinola, and I live in Lion Village. I'm also a business owner here in Arlington. I'm speaking today to follow up on the demands community members have delivered to you. I'm part of La Colectiva, and we call on the county to commit to introduce and pass policies to end countywide collaboration with immigration and customs enforcement. As you already know, last year one of our neighbors and his family were separated because Arlington County Police called ICE on him after a fender bender. He and his partner shared this experience directly with Mr. DeFerranti and Caratonis during a listening session we hosted in August, along with the Defund Nova Police Coalition. Despite an email from Mr. DeFerranti saying we get a response, nothing came. Following this, news reporting confirmed that Arlington Police Department has a direct collaboration with ICE. Through that reporting, it was revealed the Arlington Police Department was untruthful when they claimed the person that they deported had an ICE detainer. ICE themselves confirmed that it did not. Other community members have shared with us at La Colectiva that after an arrest, they paid bail and the person was still held and transferred to ICE custody by Arlington County officers. And our own members have experienced surveillance from Arlington Police Department on different occasions. So again, La Colectiva and our campaign partners call on you to commit to introducing and passing policies ending countywide collaboration with ICE. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Our next speaker is Mary Glass, followed by Jim Harris.
Good morning. Thanks
morning.
for the opportunity to speak about a brighter future for our environment in this gorgeous fall environment. This year, Arlington County has committed $33 million to water quality, including 56% of that for stream restoration. Only one stream restoration, Donaldson Run, is getting $2.6 million, and the construction budget has grown from $1.4 million in 2019 to $2.4 million this year, in addition to soft costs, making a total of $3.1 million for one stream restoration. Where does this extra money come from, and why has the budget increased so much? Stream restoration is very expensive in any case, and it's only a Band-Aid that buys time. So we need to devote a larger portion of our stormwater investments to control runoff at its source. Next slide, please. We have many good ideas for the future that can change the course of stream restoration. Currently, the design has been in place for almost a decade with minor changes, and there's so many new techniques that are available and have been shared with the county that would be much less destructive for the natural areas, could use existing on-site materials, and reduce costs by over 50%. And these have not been seriously studied and analyzed. The public wants more natural areas. This was confirmed by the 2016 County Needs Assessment of Parks and Recreation, where natural areas and hiking trails were the highest priority for investment and expansion. In both 2017 and 2020, actual patrons of Donaldson Run signed petitions requesting that the project be paused long enough to see if there's a way to save trees and preserve the natural environment. These were both denied. We can serve the future better by pausing the stream restoration programs long enough to use the best ideas available and make the best use of our county resources. I've provided additional reference materials to back up my comments today, and hope that the county board will very seriously look at this, a difficult choice, but a bad choice.
Thank you, Ms. Glass. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Jim Harris, followed by Sharon Valencia. Mr. Harris, need to unmute your line, star 6.
Yes, now we can hear you. Go ahead.
This is a letter I sent to the county board and county manager on September 22nd with no response. Arlington's so-called affordable housing program is an out-and-out fraud, continually perpetrated on Arlington's taxpayers and on the workforce and middle class who badly need housing that is actually affordable to persons who earn significantly less than a living wage. The affordable housing that has been and is being constructed using AHIF funds is gentrification housing, which typically costs $400,000 per unit for new construction for luxury upper middle class housing to benefit wealthy for-profit and nonprofit corporations and partnerships, and an upscale tech force that has significant disposable income, as indicated by the vehicles owned by residents of so-called affordable apartments and parked in large garages on site. Much, if not most, of Arlington's so-called affordable housing has been and is being constructed in corridors where there is significant low-wage employment, but these workers are precluded from living in AHIF subsidized units because they have insufficient income. No matter how much so-called affordable housing has been and is being constructed in Arlington, costs increase significantly every year. Consequently, I and others call for an immediate end to the affordable housing fraud, another component of so-called smart growth. And in the same manner, it's outrageous that so many Arlington residents in positions of authority and responsibility who own single-family detached homes are calling others who own single-family detached homes racists. Back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Sharon Valencia. Sharon Valencia, oh, there you go.
Hi, this is Sharon Valencia, and I can hear the interference, but I also don't have any other methods going.
Yeah, no, that's it's you're good now for us anyway. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. The Atta American Legion site, as both the neighborhood and civic association support informed you last week, that site has currently has above ground poles that carry utilities to 12th Road. Site plan conditions and the APA presentations reflect undergrounding their utilities, and during site plan review, they said that the reason they wanted to underground those currently above ground poles that feed 12th Road was because they didn't want unsightly above ground poles on their property. The 12th Road owners have been led to believe that 12th Road utilities, impacted 12th Road utilities, would also be undergrounded. And despite many requests for information from Arlington County's affordable housing partner, which is important to remember is that they are a partner of Arlington County, finally on August 26th, APA informed only one 12th Road owner of their plan to run above ground utilities and install new above ground poles, again, too unsightly for their own property, on 12th Road, impacting the existing neighborhood. Other 12th Road owners have still not been informed of APA's current above ground utility plan. And rather than to provide those owners with information and options, APA unilaterally determined it would be too hard, in their own words, too hard to underground 12th Road and went with a lesser option, again, despite not communicating options with any 12th Road owners. It is incredibly disappointing that the neighborhood was not provided with options supporting documentation, and I can now hear that the notice is going off, but I appreciate the opportunity, despite receiving information that this has been closed by Arlington County and not being considered.
Okay.
Thank
the
you.
Neighborhood
Thank you,
and
Ms.
Civic
Valencia.
Association require
Yeah,
consideration.
we'll
Thank
talk
you.
about, thank you, Ms. Valencia. Okay, should we see if, is Mr. Kyle Karsten made it here?
Madam Chair, I am not seeing Kyle Karsten or Marcus Kendrick in our room, but let's just double check.
Okay.
Kyle Karsten, Marcus Kendrick. Okay, I don't believe they have joined. They have not joined us today.
Okay. All right, well then, thank you everyone who did come, really appreciate it. Sorry, it's a little bit, it's kind of awkward sometimes, I think, for all of us with this electronic system, but we did manage to hear from everybody that was here, and we appreciate you all coming. So first was Curtis Bell, worried about traffic on Lorcum Lane and wanting to restrict traffic. There is a way to officially put in a request that obviously it goes through some research with our transportation department. And I know Ben Aiken is here. Mr. Aiken, I think you're pretty familiar with how that works. If you would like to fill people in on what they can do if they're concerned about traffic safety or speeding, because I think that's was the issue was too much traffic he felt on Lorcum Lane.
Yeah, Ms. Crystal, I'm sorry, Ms. Garvey, thank you. Mr. Bell actually wrote us, I believe, in May, and I had responded to his concerns, and I actually informed him at the time that Lorcum Lane was one of our first arterials, I believe, scheduled for the $200 increased traffic fine. So that's an upcoming improvement. And then as far as speed bumps, I think we've informed everyone, that we're under a longstanding moratorium as it relates to speed bumps. But his request is with our transportation engineering and operations. So I can follow up with him separately via email to give him an update on that.
No, that's very helpful. And I think the $200 fine for speeding should start to help. I hope we'll see that. Ms. Crystal, I'm sorry, your hand is up. I didn't miss that.
Ms. Morin, I believe, actually spoke first. I just wanted to make sure she was on your list. And if not, I'd love to begin the conversation with that. She's next on your list?
She's next. She is, yeah. Yeah. So that's fine. I think we're good with Mr. Bell, and thank you for following up, Mr. Aiken. Ms. Crystal, go ahead with Ms. Morin. Yes, she's next on the list.
Yeah, thank you. I suspect we were all really struck by that. And Ms. Morin, thank you for taking the time. I'm so sorry about the experience that you've had, genuinely. And I hear your experience with great frustration, because it's not that apartments weren't available for you. It's that there was a problem in how that administration is happening to get you into one that resulted in an extraordinary volunteer, it sounds like a graduate of our neighborhood college program, having to move out of the county. So I would love, colleagues, especially if you agree, for us to ask Mr. Aiken and, in fact, the entirety of the manager's office to try to do a review of what happened here about the Housing Information Center giving out information that wait lists are 5 years long, which we know is not true, which Ms. Morin lived being not true, and trying to get a better answer about what sort of information is being given out from our Housing Information Center about wait lists. So personally, I'd love to hear that, as well as, hopefully having Mr. Aiken follow up with Ms. Morin on her experience directly, because this could indicate, not a policy problem, an administration problem, right? That's working at cross purposes with a pretty significant investment of resources. I also just wanted to add a thought, and then I'll yield, because I suspect my colleagues will want to comment on this too. I have had the desire, and in fact, conversations with other renters in Arlington about really wanting to have a singular database for all of our, committed affordable units and buildings about what's open when and how long the wait list is. That's proved hard because it's information being collected from a variety of sources, and it's all dynamic, and so a little hard to aggregate that. However, as Ms. Morin asked for, why is there no standardization? And I think that is a very fair question, and the opportunity for us to start a conversation with our handful of big nonprofit providers anyway about a standardized system and expectations for wait lists. The last piece about rent control, I really understand the desire. Regretfully, that is a decision made at the state level, and so that's not a conversation we can have here in Arlington County. But I know that it's one that's been brought to the attention of our state legislators, particularly Delegate Alfonso Lopez. Depending on what part of the county you live in, he might represent you. And so I think that's a conversation we can continue to be engaged in, and I hope you will too at the state level. But there is a lot of what you shared that's within our power to try to fix. And personally, I'd really love to hear more about how we can, at a start, make sure that the information renters get when they reach out for help from the county is accurate and consistent with their desire and our desire to keep people like Ms. Morin here in Arlington. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Crystal. I totally agree. And I thought we were moving to getting a central database that was going to be working well, but clearly we've got a long way to go. And we do have her contact information for just that point. I think what you're saying is not only are we worried about Ms. Morin, but we want to do an overall look at what's going on. I'm sorry, lots of hands are up. I'm sorry, Mr. DeFranti.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just briefly, I think, Ms. Morin, you know that in addition to Ms. Crystal, I'm also an Arlington Neighborhood College graduate, so your story struck me. I think Ms. Crystal covered it well. I just put a fine point and additional voice for the hard work of creating a wait list, that is creating a database that is coordinated. I want to follow up on that, and I also will be looking for the lessons more broadly that Ms. Crystal and Madam Chair you've mentioned.
Thank you. Mr. Karantanis.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Ms. Crystal, for covering, and Mr. DeFranti for covering the issue quite extensively. I would like to add only two things. First of all, I'm really concerned about the very first sentence, that the very first piece of information that Ms. Morin gave us, 20% rent increase. This is a multiple of the inflation rate of rents in Arlington right now. So we will follow up and see what is behind that rent increase. Rent increases don't occur only naturally. Unfortunately, we have a supply-starved market. We are really trying with our affordable housing policy to counterbalance that, but 20% rent increase is excessive, and we have to find and have to be informed ourselves about what exactly is going on there. So this is one piece. The second thing is, yes, indeed, the way that we inventorize committed affordable units and provide them as provide database information, central information, is not great. This we have known for a while. We have tried to improve that. There are also some legal problems there, as committed affordable housing, is subject to different jurisdictional and legal stresses there. But I think that it's worth the while, as we talk about our affordable housing master plan review soon, to look also about inventorizing and catalogizing also the market rate affordable housing that is available, so that we have some sort of that we provide to those who look for housing in Arlington a better overview over all options that they may have here in the county. So that I would like to add to the long list of to-do list here.
Yeah, thank you. Lots to look at. Mr. Dorsey.
And I'll just say, as a brief point, thank you, colleagues, for giving your thoughts and recommendations moving forward for how we organize ourselves for staff. For people who may find themselves identifying with Ms. Morin's situation and left with making decisions about leaving the county or making significant choices that they don't want to make, I would encourage you to be as persistent as you possibly can to make sure all avenues are explored. As colleagues have mentioned, we have a variety of approaches to dealing with housing. Our Committed Affordable program has certain eligibility requirements and certain restrictions on our ability to make sure that is widely known through databases and such, but we have other programs that may be suitable for people. And unfortunately, one of the things that we do know is that sometimes customer service doesn't exactly become responsive to your specific needs. So when I hear about your being told that there was a 5-year waiting list, the alarm bell went off for me that maybe you were speaking to someone who thought you were looking for eligibility for a federal housing choice voucher, in which case there's a very significant wait list for that. But maybe you were looking for and eligible for another potential program and opportunity. So for anyone else out there who doesn't get an avenue towards resolving their concerns. I encourage you to be as persistent as possible so that we can hopefully match you up with something that is there. It breaks my heart that your situation probably did not have to happen. And, you know, it's on us to figure out how to make sure we can improve our systems. But in the interim, I encourage everybody to be as persistent as possible, and hopefully we can match you up with appropriate services.
Thank you. Yeah, I think your story is pretty distressing to all of us. I do want to say, while the 20% rent increase is concerning, we do not have any control over rent, again, because we just don't. This is Virginia, and we cannot tell a landlord what they can charge for their property, unless, of course, it's committed affordable, which is a different thing. So thank you all very much. And Ms. Morin, we will follow up with you for sure and hope to get you back soon. Let's see, the next item I was actually going to turn to our manager. This is Ms. Burns, about the Shirlington Jenny Dean Park. And I think this is a little bit a review of what happened last month, Mr. Schwartz. And I see also that you've been putting something in the chat. So I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about something, if there's anything else that you wanted to remark upon, and also to see if we've got a better update on Jenny Dean Park construction. Mr. Schwartz?
And so, thank you, Madam Chair. On Jenny Dean Park, last month when the question came up, I said that we would start construction in October, and or you would see things happening on site in October, and that is still our plan. We have been going through the permitting process, and we're about to get the construction trailer permit, and you should see things happening by the end of the month. Last month I was careful not to give a specific date in October, but we're still committed to having something happen this month.
Thank you, Mr.
And also, I posted, and I think I absolutely agree that there needs to be a better comprehensive resource for people to look for housing units. But there are, on our website, there is a list of committed affordable units available as of last week. And also, the Commonwealth has a virginiahousingsearch.com site. I'm not going to sit here and say that they are perfect or comprehensive, but they are at least resources.
Thank you. Mr. Dorsey, is your hand back up again? Did you want to comment?
It is, Madam Chair. Just a quick question for Mr. Schwartz about Jenny Dean Park. So the original project timetable has completion by around September 2021. Has the delayed start to construction commencement dictated an extension of the timetable on the back end?
I do not know the answer to that question, but I will get back and let you know.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right, that brings us to Amy DeRue, who has lived for a long time. Excuse me? Sorry. Our next speaker was, I think it was Amy DeRue. She was at 1000 North Edgewood. Maybe if I'm mispronouncing your name, I apologize. And concerned about, which we hear about a lot, construction from new houses going up, trees getting cut down, lots being covered. It's a major issue. And we do have inspections, and I don't know if it's Mr. Schwartz, for you a little bit to talk about how we have inspections. Sometimes people think we don't, we do. And I would be interested myself, actually, in a little bit of information now and more later about the whole issue of lot lines, because I believe lot coverage was changed some years ago, and it's something we might want to revisit. I'm wondering what would be involved if we do that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I'd like to say hello to Amy and Walt, both of whom I know fairly well. And there has been a lot of activity going on in their street, and I've talked with the DeRue family on occasion. I'm going to commit to getting back to Amy and with some more details. One of the things she asked about was there an ability on our part to stage the amount of work going on her street, given that there are multiple sites? And that's actually a very fair question. I do not know the answer to that. As far as lot lines, I need to look into it. One of the things that we've had a number of inspectors go and specifically actually visit the site next door to them and do some work to make sure that I don't think that the site next door to them was actually, when the construction was going on, that some of the right processes were followed, and there was a lot of dust. So there's a lot of history here, but I'm committed to going back and getting back to Amy and Walt early this week with more details.
Thank you very much, Mr. Schwartz. Appreciate that. And I am interested at some point at looking at, obviously we've got a lot going on right now, but the issue of lot coverage, and we are very concerned about trees getting cut down and often frustrated by our lack of ability to affect that very, very much. And we are concerned about it and seeing what we can do, but it's not great right now. Mr. Karantonis.
Mr. Ru has suggested that we dedicate some arborist resources or some arborist time to work with developers or construction companies to see whether we can actually save some trees in these new developments and construction sites. In my neighborhood, I actually have experienced that when there is some action on this, there can be results. So I've seen more than 3 or 4 times that the intervention of an arborist has saved a few trees, not all of them, unfortunately. So there is some core of worth pursuing on this line as well. I believe that a lot of construction companies don't know how to protect trees and still get these new homes built.
Thank you, Mr.
And we can help them to do that well.
Yeah, we do have a program. We do have a program to try to talk with and work with developers and let them know what they can do and find ways to encourage them to keep the trees. But it's not always, again, as effective because we are able to encourage people, but not to require it. So
well, we can also convince them that it improves the property value of what they're building, actually. So
yes,
that was very powerful in our case.
Yeah, we show them those facts and figures, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. All right. Thank you. Let's see. That brings us to Rose Espina, I think it was. Pardon me if I'm mispronouncing the name, with La Colectiva, worried about collaboration with ICE. And I think I'll turn it back again. I think, Mr. Schwartz, this is for you to talk a little bit about. We do not collaborate with ICE, but we do follow the law. That's my understanding. And I know there is some disagreement, but if you can fill that in, and then I know Mr. DeFranti has something he wants to say, because I think he's met with the speaker. Mr. Schwartz.
Yeah, thank you. Let me state again what our policy is, which you just said, and there's extensive details on this on our website. If you type in immigration and go back, our policy was described very thoroughly back in the beginning of 2017, and we do not do the work of the federal government. We will not do the work of the federal government. We will not, when our officers stop individuals, we do not inquire about immigration status. At the same time, we also will assist federal officials if there is something called a detainer that's placed in the Virginia database, and we are alerted to that. And all these details are laid out pretty clearly on the website. As to the specific cases involved, I can't say that I have intimate knowledge of this. I think Mr. DeFerrante and Mr. Karantonis have actually probably spent more time talking to the chief of police about this than I have. So I'm going to defer over to Mr. DeFerrante first.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manager and Madam Chair. Ms. Rose Espinola, I apologize. We have been working on a response, but you raised in our meeting the defund the police, the demands and concerns you had there. Then raised this specific set of issues. So as we were following up, we both tried to address the individual circumstance you mentioned with the one person in a broad way through conversations with our chief of police. And we also tried to address your policy issues. We actually, I emailed last night, Mr. Karantonis and Mr. Dorsey, because I understand you were one of your members was at Monday's Open Door Monday and raised some questions. Over the coming days and week, we will get back in touch with you. Our response had been, we wanted to be accurate and thorough with our response to you. So we will get in touch with you. And I'm sure that Mr. Karantonis or Mr. Dorsey, if I haven't covered anything, feel free to add, but I think that addresses trying to respond to your concerns. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
Why don't we hear back from you?
Yeah. Thank you. We don't have back
When
and
will we hear back?
wait, we don't have back and forth, Ms. Dispa. I'm sorry, it just gets a little bit too difficult to run things here. So he said we get back to you soon, and as soon as we're able, we will. Mr. Carantonis.
Very soon, Mr. Spinola. Actually, we have been working in figuring out exactly what the processes are that led to the transfer of custody of the person you refer of this incident to ICE. I cannot underscore enough the statement of the county manager and every one of my colleagues that we don't collaborate with ICE, not only because we don't believe that this is our job to collaborate with ICE and to enforce immigration, but also with that because we are aware that right now ICE is an agency that puts kids in cages, separates families, and does a lot of things for which I'm not the only one in this room here that has very, very, very big problems with. And I believe that we are down to even discussing the violation of human rights here. So this is one more of the reason that we want to be very precise about how exactly the intersection between our law enforcement here and federal law enforcement works. So we wanted exactly to know whether there was or what kind of a detainer or what kind of an entry in the criminal information system has triggered the information about the detention of this person being transferred to federal law enforcement. We want to know exactly how we keep tabs on this, how we record this incidents in Arlington, because this was a question also, and what can we further do to implement the policy that we have so that we have no collaboration with ICE at all. So we will get back to you with a detailed response very, very soon, I guess in the next few days.
All right, thank you, Mr. Carantonis. All right. That brings us to Mary Glass, who came to speak to us about stream restoration. And it was a conversation we've been having for, I think, about 5 to 10 years on stream restoration. And I know, I think there's just a difference of opinion, Ms. Glass, and it's always good to hear from you. And I appreciate your commitment to the environment, and we simply have a disagreement with you and our staff about what is the best way to do it. The alternatives have been quite a bit analyzed. I know, Mr. Aiken, you've been in correspondence, I think, with Ms. Glass. Is there anything you particularly would like to add on this item?
I'm not sure there is. I know that Ms. Glass has been in contact with our staff recently. I know that the manager sent a detailed response to the concerns of her and others regarding stream restoration generally and our approach, which is too lengthy, I think, to go into too much detail right now over, but I think that those concerns have been aired and answered.
Yeah, I think quite a bit. And in fact, that brings me something. I don't know, maybe we could check and see if the response to Ms. Glass is up on the website under stormwater. There's a lot of information there about what we're doing on stream restoration. And it doesn't necessarily have to have, her name on an address and things, but just that particular response, because it's a concern that we, been hearing over a long period of time and had a lot of back and forth on. So if that's, that would be great, I think. Let's see. I see two hands. I don't know who was first. I'll go to Mr. Dorsey and then Mr. Carantonis. And Mr. Schwartz, did you want to say something as well?
Well, I did want to say, because Ms. Glass had quoted a figure about the cost for the stream restoration, and that is an estimate. We're going to competitively bid the project and hope that the number for the work there actually comes in lower, but we'll let the magic of the market work its in that case.
Thank you. And part of the reason it is expensive is it's not a Band-Aid. This is to get the stream really restored and stabilized. Mr. Dorsey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to underscore for Ms. Glass, because I know it's difficult when she's looking for a specific outcome for a specific project to lose sight of the fact that she's very much helped influence, the thinking of not only the board, but also staff on these issues. And at the risk of being reductionist, her points are to, make sure we are balancing the desire for stream erosion remediation with ecological preservation, and also ensuring that we're doing something that's responsible with tax dollars so that we can have the resources to do all that is necessary on the environmental sustainability front. And that message is clearly received. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, while there is a difference in approach to this particular project based on staff's analysis and perspective, the overall goal of making sure we don't engineer solutions that are too big, too expensive, too intrusive to meet the needs of the project is very much a part of staff's work. And I just appreciate Ms. Glass for making sure that we're mindful of that.
Thank you, Mr. Dorsey. Mr. Carantone.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that the county manager and Mr. Dorsey has covered most of what I wanted to say. One thing I just wanted to underscore is that we will have an RFP, as the county manager just said, for the specific action, for the specific work. I know that this is where the many details and many technical parameters will be revealed, and this is a conversation that we will have on this RFP. So I'm looking forward to that and to Ms. Glass's input on this as well.
Thank you. No, I think I appreciate everybody's comments, and particularly Mr. Dorsey pointing out that, and I know it can be frustrating having been there sometimes some years ago myself, where the specific thing you want doesn't come through, but you do affect the conversation and make a positive difference. So thank you for pointing that out. That brings us to Mr. Hers, who came to us this morning concerned about affordable housing. And talking about people who, if they don't have enough income, they're precluded from being in our affordable housing projects. And of course, we have a wide range of housing, committed affordable housing for people of very low income. And I don't know if any of my colleagues who have worked in this space for a bit would like to make some comments. I thought they might. Ms. Crystal.
Sure, I'll be brief. Without belaboring our extensive strategy to match committed affordable apartments with housing grants for our very low income neighbors, the point is it can be really hard to achieve bricks and mortar that's committed as affordable for 30% or area median income, or the folks Mr. Hers was talking about. And that's why our housing grant strategy is incredibly important. I don't have the number at my fingertips, but a very significant percentage of our residents in committed affordable units also receive a housing grant from the county. It wouldn't be possible for people to afford even a 60% of area median income rent without those housing grants, and without those committed affordable units at 60% of area median income rent, then those housing grants wouldn't go very far in the open market at all. So both of those strategies are incredibly important in working together. It is certainly not true that anybody is restricted from a committed affordable unit because they don't make enough money. In those situations, the county has the housing grants program to ensure that those two planks of our housing platform work together. So thanks for the opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah, we're very committed in keeping people housed in Arlington. I think that's going to come up in our consent items soon. We've got some funding, particularly with COVID. This the issue of keeping people in their homes is very important right now. All right, and then that brings us to Sharon Valencia, concerned about the American Legion site and the undergrounding of utilities. And I do not remember the exact conditions of this site, and I guess somebody could get back to her, because my understanding is their conditions, but I don't think they involve them handling the 12th Road incomplete, but possibly. Mr. Dorsey, do you remember?
Oh, I am in the process of working with staff on investigating and reporting on this issue due to the concerns that have been offered by Ms. Valencia and the Boston Virginia Square Civic Association. So as she outlined in her remarks, it's fairly complex, looking at conditions, engineering plans, and also impacts which may have been unintended. So I'm in the process of bringing that all together based on the communication this week.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dorsey. Ms. Valencia will be back with you. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. I Didn't realize you were working on that. There is a lot going on. Thank you. All right. I think that brings us to the end of our public comment. And I want to again thank everybody for coming. And that moves us on to our consent agenda. Madam Clerk, I think we've had an item or a few items maybe pulled from our consent agenda. Have we?
That is correct, Madam Chair. We have item number 3, which is site plan 443, and item 34, which is an allocation of digital equity funds.
Okay, 3 and 34. Thank you. All right. Could I have a motion on the consent items, please?
So moved, Madam Chair, and approval of the consent agenda with the exception of items 3 and 34.
Thank you very much. A second?
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye. Ms. Crystal?
Aye.
Mr. DeFerranti?
Aye.
Mr. Dorsey?
Aye.
Mr. Carantonis?
Aye.
Ms. Garvey? I say yes as well. All right, motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much, colleagues. And then I'll talk a little bit about the consent agenda, because the consent agenda is not, it's not that they're not important items. They're items that just aren't particularly controversial, and we try to be efficient. There are often a lot of them. In fact, one of the ones which I'll talk in here often, that we have to vote to accept money. And it rarely is that controversial. But I'll go over a number of the items. The ones that have been pulled, by the way, 3 and 34, they will be heard at our recess meeting, and that will be they will have a public hearing and board consideration then. So folks that are interested, you can sign up to speak on that if you would like, on those 2 items that were pulled at our recess meeting. We'll begin no earlier than 6:30 on Tuesday. Let's see. I think I'll start with childcare. With our consent agenda items, we approved more than a dozen use permits, use permit amendments, and use permit renewals for childcare center and programs today. I think we have a nice slide with children on it, just because it's just always a nice slide to see, I think. And, it really underscores, I think, how our county's child care initiative is helping to expand child care options. And as I often do, I throw a bouquet to Ms. Crystal, because when she was chair, this was her initiative, and it really is paying off for people. So as difficult as this is, and that's a need that we don't begin to fulfill, but we are continuing to make some progress. And so we're seeing child care centers grow to serve more children. Some of them are expanding their hours during COVID. I'm going to highlight just a couple. We approved a use permit for the YMCA Child Care Center in the Westover Baptist Church at 1125 Patrick Henry Drive, and this allows them to become full-day child care program for up to 20 children. The Y is currently operating a before and after school care program, and now they too will be providing a safe space for children who were distance learning during the pandemic, and their new operating hours will be from 7 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. Monday through Friday. We also approved a use permit amendment to allow a great program, Aspire, which operates out of the Arlington Mill Community Center on Columbia Pike, to basically do the same thing. It's converting from an after-school program for up to 100 children to a full-day program for up to 120 children. And Aspire 2 will be providing a safe space all day for students in grades 3 to 5 who were distance learning during the COVID pandemic. And the new hours for them are 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. And we have, for those who are interested, we do have real-time childcare availability information during the pandemic on our website. And again, I know the need is very great, but we do have some information there, and there are some slots that come available. You can go on to family.arlingtonva.us/childcare, or just go onto our website and put in childcare on the search. We also approved today a number of items that provide significant new funding, as I mentioned, for COVID relief. One is allocating federal HUD funding for 7 programs run by local nonprofits that will help more than 4,100 Arlington families and individuals who are in need because of the pandemic. We approved the manager's recommendation to allocate that's a fun number, $2.222 million to fund a variety of COVID-19 relief programs. This was through a competitive bidding process, and we awarded funding to programs focused on housing, food security, job training, and placement, and also for small business retention and support. The funding will be divided among the organizations. I think we've got them all up here. The logos: AFAC, Arlington Thrive, Doorways for Women and Families, Legal Aid, Justice Center, Northern Virginia Family Services, Real Food for Kids, and Service Source. These are all organizations that are already doing great work in our community during this very difficult time. We really depend on them to help us meet the needs of our population right now. And we're so pleased that there's some more funds to help them go. Our goal is to keep people in their homes, keep food on the table, and provide job training to those who have lost their jobs during because of the pandemic and help them find new jobs. And these funds help us do that. We also have approved some state funding to provide intensive case management and psychiatric services to persons being released from the Arlington County Detention Facility. This is another important grant. The State Department of Behavioral Health and Development awarded the county a $178,000 grant. It's not all that much money, but it funds a full-time behavioral health specialist and part-time services of a psychiatrist. And as we all know, people who are released from jail are at high risk of relapse on substance use or deterioration of their own mental health and recidivism. It's really always difficult and even more difficult during the pandemic. So we're just really pleased that this health specialist is here to work with people who have some significant mental health needs and ensure that they're going to be linked to needed services. Finally, let's see, we accepted a $240,000 and a little bit grant for a rapid response fund to prevent and/or respond to layoffs from Washington Reagan National Airport. And this is a 6-month grant from the Virginia Community College System to our Department of Human Services Employment Services. And that will help airport employees identify other sources of federal funding that may help prevent layoffs and also offer some online training for them to find some other jobs. And we will be managing that program for both Arlington and Alexandria, a little cooperation there. And finally, last item I've got here just to talk about, the board approved and allocated nearly $900,000 in additional HUD funding, and that's through December of just this year, for Section 811 housing choice vouchers under the Federal CARES Act. And these vouchers help subsidize rents for low-income families and will help hold people who have these vouchers, but due to job losses, need even more assistance to pay their rent and or utilities. So we are very grateful to have all of this funding, and we'll continue to move forward as we continue to face the challenges of COVID and help everybody get through it. That, I think, brings us to our regular hearing item, I believe. Madam Clerk, can you call the first item, please?
Yes, Madam Chair. Okay, our first regular hearing item is item 45. Site Plan 76. It's a site plan amendment for conversion of hotel units to residential dwelling units with modification of several zoning standards located at 1200 North Courthouse Road.
All right, thank you. Mr. Manager, over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Making the presentation on item 45 will be Adam Watson of CPHD, assisted by Jane Kim, the Department of Environmental Services. Mr. Watson.
Thank you and good morning. Hopefully you all can hear me and see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Excellent, great. All right, good morning, Madam Chair, members of the County Board. This is the Park Arlington at Courthouse Site Plan Amendment. So this site is located at 1200 North Courthouse Road, which is in the Clarendon Courthouse Civic Association and is located just 2 blocks south of the Arlington Courthouse Metro Station, or about 1,000 feet. Just briefly, some background and existing conditions on this site. This building was constructed by right in 1962 as a residential apartment building. It was formalized as part of a site plan, a separate site plan from Site Plan 75 in 1977. And in 1980, because of the zoning provisions of this district at that time, it was allowed to administratively convert to a hotel use. Most recently, in 2005, there was a site plan amendment to reduce the overall hotel density, as well as to acquire some square footage of site area from the adjoining site to the south, which is again Site Plan 75, the Bell Apartments as they exist today. In terms of our general land use plan and our zoning for the site is outlined here on your screen in that dashed yellow line, and the site is designated medium residential on our GLUP and RAH hotel district on the zoning map. And the key takeaway here is just that aligns. The medium land use designation does align with the RH zoning, and there is no proposed rezoning for this project. Moving to the proposal itself, this is a fairly straightforward request to convert an existing building from hotel to residential use, likely a condominium, with a decrease in density, going from 187 guest rooms down to 180 dwelling units. The parking is also proposed to decrease with the proposed parking ratio of 0.83 spaces per unit. There are some additional changes occurring on the site with this proposal, including increased landscaping and screening, improved pedestrian connections, including a widening of an existing pathway on the west side of the building, reduced surface parking, and some facade updates. In terms of zoning ordinance modifications, there are 3. The first is to reduce the overall parking ratio below the standard of 1.125 spaces per unit, to increase the compact parking ratio above the ordinance's 15% baseline. And then this last one is to do with the lot coverage. I want to just point out that the lot coverage is actually decreasing on this site. It's going from about approximately 63% today down to, I want to say, around approximately 61%. However, this is a provision of the RH district where if the lot coverage is above 50%, it does need a board modification. In terms of policy guidance, this site does fall under the courthouse sector plan addendum. However, it is not identified as a key redevelopment site. And of course, this site is not really fully redeveloping. So there's not a lot of site-specific guidance provided in this sector plan for this site. It is applicable under the RB corridor streetscape standards. There are some, from what staff believes, acceptable deviations from these standards, again, because this is basically an adaptive reuse of a building, and that's along the 13th Street and Courthouse Road frontages where we have existing utility conflicts, and then most importantly on Courthouse Road, where VDOT very recently repaved the entire sidewalk and also placed a retaining wall. And I just want to point out that the southern frontage on 12th Court North does comply with this standard. This site is also eligible for reduced parking under the off-street parking guidelines. So it's eligible to go as low as 0.83 spaces per unit. The applicant is again requesting, as low as 0.3 spaces per unit. The applicant is requesting 0.83, which does align with the guidelines. And then lastly, we look to our master transportation plan in terms of looking for guidance on discouraging the continuity of surface parking lots, which this site has 2 on the front and the rear. So I want to talk a little bit about how this project evolved over the course of the SPRC and the public and staff review processes. We asked the applicant to address a number of things, and a number of these things were also significant SPRC concerns, and I think we've landed in a very good place. So the first thing is to eliminate surface parking overall, and the applicant has agreed to do that, and they eliminated overall 21 surface parking spaces, which include, if you can see my cursor, about 11 parking spaces here in the front lot, and then 10 parking spaces in the rear lot. Sort of hand in glove with that is increasing the amount of landscaping and the screening and the biophilic elements. So also in green circled here are the general areas where we're going to be seeing enhanced landscaping and screening and biophilic treatment that will be implemented with the final landscape plan. We also asked that they do something to mitigate the existing surface parking lots to remain, including reducing impervious surface area to the greatest extent possible. And so the applicant has agreed in this yellow strip along Courthouse Road to treat 27 parking spaces, which is approximately 4,100 square feet, with permeable pavers. Another important topic at SPRC was having safe pedestrian connection internal to the site from either, Courthouse Road on the east of the site or 12th Court North to the south to be able to get to the front door of this property, which is under the portico share here in the middle. And so in this blue line highlighted here on our site plan, they have created a new internal sidewalk, which is raised and protected, which is definitely an improvement over the existing condition where no sidewalk exists. And then lastly, there is an existing pedestrian path along the west side of the building, which the applicant is going to be expanding. And they are going to be granting a private access easement for pedestrian access to the neighboring properties to the south, who are the customary users of this pathway including the Vista condominiums to the southwest and the Bell Apartments directly to the south. In terms of community engagement, we did have one SPRC meeting in February. Unfortunately, our second SPRC meeting was canceled in March due to the COVID crisis. However, all of the revised materials and the revised staff report were posted online for everyone to see. The county board did defer action on this item at the applicant's request to October. And so then coming to October, we've had our commission meetings. We had Transportation Commission meeting at the first of this month, which was unanimous approval of the county manager's recommendation. The Planning Commission did consider this on the 5th, which was also unanimous approval of the county manager's recommendation, with a number of discussion topics that I've sort of mentioned here already, including site design, streetscape, and sustainability. Our civic associations also participated in SPRC. We haven't received any formal response from Clarendon Courthouse outside of that process. Radnor Fort Myer Heights, of course, also did participate and have no issues except for that parking not further be reduced. In terms of site plan features and improvements, again, this is just sort of highlighting what's going to be coming with this project. Improved rear pedestrian pathway with the private access easement, that's condition 57 of the staff report, which will require the applicant to grant and record that easement in the land records prior to receiving its last certificate of occupancy for tenant occupancy. New permeable paving, which is condition 58. Again, overall reduced surface parking, increased landscaping, and then this last bullet here, I just wanted to point out that we're really getting a standard condition package that's more typical of a full-scale redevelopment. So it will include sustainability elements, a TDM plan, public art fund contribution, utility undergrounding contribution, and in-building wireless. So our recommendation is to adopt the subject site plan. We believe that this is an overall improvement to site conditions and will bring this 1960s site design into better alignment with current county policies. And this concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. All right. I think we're ready to hear from the applicant then. I have a feeling that we're having technical difficulties.
Can you hear me now?
Much better, yes.
There we go. I had to adjust a device, so I had trouble logging in this morning and couldn't test before you all started the meeting.
No, that's
Nicholas Cummings with Walsh. I'll get
welcome,
going.
Mr. Cummings.
Nicholas Cummings with Walsh Colucci here on behalf of the applicant. We have a brief presentation and we'll endeavor not to repeat the information you just heard from staff. We're excited to bring you the proposed conversion of this existing aging hotel into a condominium building. Our goal is to provide housing at relatively lower price points that would appeal to a larger pool of buyers, including first-time home buyers. In support of that goal, we will reuse the existing structure, but substantially renovate it with architectural upgrades to the facade and other interior improvements. I'm going to show a series of before and after slides to demonstrate to you how these upgrades and improvements will be visible to any member of the public walking past the site. And I see that we got our presentation up. And can we go to the first slide, please? All right, so here we are on North Courthouse Road, looking at the existing building. You can see the aging facade, the older balconies, the older windows, and there are some plantings, but not many, most on that retaining wall built by VDOT with the improvement of this intersection some years ago. So let's go to the next slide. So this is what it will look like after the landscaping grows out. You can see, obviously, the new facade. We have the new windows, the upgraded balconies. But we also have the significant number of new plantings that are shielding what's left of the surface parking lot from view to pedestrians and motorists coming by. I'm looking forward to seeing this, as this is on my direct path to the office, so this will be nice. Go to the next slide, please. Here we have another view of the existing building. What's important to note here is how easily you can see into the parking lot and see all those cars, but also that there's no pedestrian access to the front door of the building. Anyone visiting the building is expected to just walk through the parking lot. So let's go to the next slide. As you can see here, the number of new plantings shield the existing parking lot very well. And then we also have the new sidewalk leading to the front door of the building, providing access outside of the parking lot. That's going to be great for folks who are coming and going from the building, but also for the number of people who cut through this site from the buildings to the south. Let's go to the next slide. This is sort of the rear of the building from 13th Street North. Again, you can see the aging facade of the building, the older windows. Also, what's important here is you can see behind those gates, those are the dumpsters, and that's the terminus of the existing sort of billy goat trail that goes behind the building. So folks right now walking up that trail go right past the dumpsters. There's no real path there. They just spill out into the parking lot. Also, at the front of the image, you can see that there's a patch of grass there, but no street trees along the sidewalk. Let's go to the next slide. And this is a rendering of what it will look like. We've moved the dumpsters behind a new enclosure, but we also have the terminus of the pedestrian pathway behind the building that Mr. Watson mentioned, with a nice new boardwalk, some plantings along it, very clearly demarking where that pathway is going to be, but introducing all that plant life around it, the nod to sort of the biophilic design that is so important these days. Also adding in the trees along the sidewalk, a much improved pedestrian experience there. And that will conclude our presentation. We're available for questions. Again, wanted to keep this brief. I think Mr. Watson summarized very well the important elements of the project and the community benefits that we're delivering.
Thank you.
We thank him for all of his hard work on this project, of course.
Great. Yeah, interesting to have a tour on 1960s architecture. All right. I think we may have someone from the Planning Commission here. Maybe is Sarah Steinberger here, Madam Clerk?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Steinberger.
Hi, would you like me on video?
Whatever you would like to do is fine. It's nice to see faces, but that, yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, nice to see.
Good morning. Yes, so I think that the staff presentation and the applicant presentation really covered the grounds that Planning Commission from our discussion on this at our meeting. In terms of, as you saw, it was a unanimous vote in support. And I think one of the things I really do want to highlight is that the Planning Commission is very excited that this is a adaptive reuse of the site, and that's something that we're very excited about. So certainly there are some accommodations that are going to be made with the site that, as a result of that we understand there is sort of, in terms of what the surface area, and particularly with some, in bringing in more biophilic aspects to the surface, what used to be kind of that more expansive parking lot, reducing the the ground level parking there. That was sort of the bulk of our conversations, understanding that there are going to be some things that are not maybe as possible because of the adaptive reuse to the site, but that we're very excited to be able to have that. And really, a bulk of the conversation we had at the Planning Commission actually addressed ways that we could sort of, when we're looking at adaptive reuse projects, what that process looks like for the Planning Commission, and what kind of topics we want to focus on, kind of a broader policy discussion of what that would look like going forward. This was fully supported and really not a controversial matter in any kind of regard. Are there other specific questions I can kind of address on that? We are very pleased that the access path, the existing one, both the new one that's going to be developed, and then the maintenance and improvement of the existing path, and certainly the access easement for those in the community. The reality is that path will probably be used sort of by anyone in the area, and not just the communities in that immediate neighborhood. But I understand from kind of a liability standpoint why that would be a local local property easement, but that's a different conversation.
Thank you. And we very well may have some questions if you can stick around, because what we'll do is, thank you. I know Transportation Commission submitted a letter. I don't know if we have any other commissioners with us, Madam Clerk?
No, we do not.
Okay, Transportation Commission also approved it. I think you're right. This is an easy one. It's such an improvement. Do we have any speakers?
Yes, Madam Chair, we have one public speaker.
Okay, we will take our speaker.
Bernard Byrne.
Okay, Mr. Byrne.
Hello. I didn't attend the site plan committee meetings because they were quite a while ago, but I did speak to the Planning Commission about this, and it involves the landscaping. If the county in 2016 issued a monarch pledge, which said that Arlington County provides recommendations to developers and residents regarding landscaping to promote wise conservation stewardship, including protection of pollinators and maintenance of their habitats and urban environments. And it went on, but it mentioned how you need to plant things to support monarch butterflies. which means common milkweed. Milkweed is its overall term. The only one that really lives well in Arlington and survives is called common milkweed or Acerioca. Basically, this has not been put into site plans. In this case, the site plan does not have the final landscaping plan. It has the tree plan, but that's all. So we don't know if this is really going to be biophilic. They can say it's biophilic, but unless you find the right species of plants, it will not be. Now, the applicant, when addressed it, said there will be a palette of plantings, but didn't specify, after I made my comment, but didn't specify what the palette is. They said there will be evergreens, and obviously it'd be grasses. Well, these are not biophilic, even though they're plants. They don't support pollinators. And the idea is we need to really plant pollinators between the sidewalk and the street and various other places, wherever possible. We should not plant grasses on these site plans. And this, by the way, is true of parks. The park plants have never had the right species of milkweed. Once in a while they have the species, but it's the wrong species. It's not the ones that monarchs prefer. So it's important to plant this one type of milkweed. It's called Asclepias syriaca. Now, I sent a message with this to Mr. Watson, who said he transmitted to the landscaper, to the applicant. I'd like to know if the applicant's response, if they are going to plant milkweed there, and if they are going to try to avoid planting evergreens, which, as I say, most pollinators don't go to evergreens. There's a question of evolution. They evolved before the pollinators. So the main thing is fill up the spaces with all pollinators. You have flowers, but not grasses. Because you see along the sidewalks, a lot of site plan projects, some grasses and things like that. They don't help pollinators. If you want to make it a biophilic city, and you want to enforce your monarch pledge, you've got to say this. You need to put it in a resolution tonight, to this morning, I mean, to say that you will plant milkweed. It's very simple. As a common milkweed. But the applicant has that. It also suggests in my presentation, in my letter, that they consult with the county's naturalist, Alonzo Abogadas, as to what plants they should do. So again, I would like commitment that they will consult with Alonzo. Because he's about the only one in the county who really knows what you should plant. And they never consult him. The county's landscape officers don't even know about a lot of this. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. No, thank you, Mr. Burns. That's great. Thank you. All right, colleagues, I think the conversation is now with the board. That was our only speaker. And it seems to me, I often try to outline what are some difficult issues. There seem to be none, although I think the issue of the monarch butterflies and planting milkweed is a good one. But colleagues, any questions or comments you would like to make before we get to a vote? Although if someone wants to make a motion, I would be pleased to accept it.
Madam Chair, I'd be happy to do that.
Please go ahead, Ms.
And take a quick question, if that's all right.
Sure.
I move the manager's recommendation, which is to adopt the site plan amendment ordinance to site plan 76, which will allow the conversion of 187 hotel units to 180 residential dwelling units located at 1200 North Courthouse Road, with the modifications of zoning requirements spelled out in the staff report.
Thank you. Is there a second? I'll second it. All right, Ms. Kristen.
I saw Mr. Dorsey. Yeah, unmute there. Great, thank you, Madam Chair. I just a very quick question for Mr. Cummings on behalf of the applicant, and then maybe a comment or two, and I'll yield the rest of the conversation for the rest of the conversation. Mr. Cummings, you noted that the intent was to build a product that is at a lower price. So I wondered if you could tell us a little more, particularly given that this is going to be ownership, about, of course, I imagine your client is not ready to set a price on the units, but tell us a little more about what lower price means to you generally, and what area of the market you're trying to serve.
Sure, I think it's a great question for my client, Mr. Milkey, and he's on, and I'm going to allow himself a moment to unmute himself and join. But I think that in reality, obviously the units would be, out on the market. But when you have a renovation versus new construction, and when you have smaller units, which we have in this development, inevitably that's going to lead to a different price point than you would see with some of the newest buildings that this board has approved, say, down the street in Roslyn, some of the newer condos there. I think we'll see a significantly different price here. Of course, that's up to the market, and so no one can really quite predict that. Mr. Milkey, did you have something you wanted to add?
I do. Thank you, Nick. Good morning. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
Welcome.
Great, thank you. I wanted to make one point before answering the question. It is not determined yet. After we run our numbers, we will determine whether we want to go back to an apartment as originally developed or condo. We suspect condo as was indicated, but that has not been finalized yet. But to answer the question, subject to some updating, because these numbers are close to a year old as working with our marketing consultants, roughly 60% of the 180 units I would anticipate would be in the range of the low to mid $300,000 range per unit to the low $400,000 unit. That consists of studios, junior 1-bedrooms, and 1-bedroom baths. The high end is in the low 800s, the low end is in the low 300s, with an average, I would say, making an average in my head, mid 400s for the whole property.
That is unusual, to say the least, in Arlington. Do you anticipate, and thank you for that reminder that it's not yet determined whether it'd be condo or affordable. Do you anticipate sort of similarly, you could imagine a sort of workforce pricing for rent if they are apartments because of the fact that it's adaptive reuse and not new construction from the ground up?
Just to clarify, you're asking if we would commit to a workforce housing program?
No, I'm sorry. I'm not asking for that commitment. And I don't think that's our zoning wouldn't lead us there. I'm asking, it seems like you've done some thinking about the pricing of the units. Should they be condo? And I'm interested if you've done some thinking about the pricing ballpark, right? Generally, what sort of area of the market might be served if it does go apartment?
Honestly, we haven't.
Okay.
We did develop what is now Bella Vista. It would certainly be well below that given the finish level, the sizes, and the amenities. Or lack of amenities in this case, as far as pools and things of that nature. But no, I would have to say that we have not looked at that in great depth yet, but we will be endeavoring to look into that, assuming there's an approval today to figure out what the next steps are and go through design.
Great. Mr. Milkey, thank you very much. I think that was very helpful. And I ask not only because I'm interested in this project, but because this is something we'd love to see the market supplying in general in Arlington, particularly that more moderate ownership product. And so it's, I think, instructive for us to try to retrace the steps of how you got here, hopefully to be in a position to offer exactly that kind of product without significant subsidy, for example, from Arlington County. So I'm heartened by that. I think that outcome, as well as the fact that with an adaptive reuse, you get a real sustainability positive impact, which is to say, we're avoiding the use of all new materials, of moving, massive amounts of old materials off the site and new ones on, et cetera. So we rarely see, I think, these types of adaptive reuse, at least in the housing space, in recent years on the board. And so I'm so pleased to see this one come about. I'd like to thank our Planning Commission, too, for bringing thoughtful consideration to this project, and our staff for quickly adapting, speaking of adapting, the SPRC schedule, given the impacts of the pandemic on the review of this project. So I'm very pleased to make that motion and to support it. And we'll look forward to seeing this come to fruition, I hope, and to see if it's ownership units, what that can add to our Roslyn to Boston corridor ownership market. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Crystal. Mr. Carantonis, your hand was up, but it's not now. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, and thank you, Ms. Crystal, for filling the motion here. I tend to support the motion. And I agree with you. Adaptive reuse is really a very interesting endeavor. We want to see more of this, a lot more of this, if possible. This from the economic point of view. These are buildings that have been built at times where labor and materials and investment was significantly lower. So we have a lot of embodied, gain there that we can use today in a circular manner to reuse these buildings and address our housing problems. The one question was raised at the pretty thorough Planning Commission meeting was about the environmental sustainability upgrade of the building, and this is what I wanted to ask. This is one question. The second question maybe can be answered in one line. I would like to know a little bit how the traffic pattern in these two curb cuts, the entrance and the exit of the parking of this building will exactly work.
So are you asking, and this is Nicholas Cummings here, and we may defer to the county, or I may call on Mr. Krebs, our civil engineer, who can also speak to the curb cuts. Is it the necessity of the curb cuts? That was part of the discussion at the planning commission.
Yes, because these are two, one after the other, and I understand that the building has two entrances or two accesses to the parking lot. I believe that this has to do with the different level of the parking garages, that they have two different accesses, right?
Exactly. So the garage, obviously, aging back to the 60s, there is no ramp inside of it leading to the different levels. And so both entrances are necessary to serve the different levels of the garage. And we did work with staff, and Ms. Kim is here in the meeting, and she spoke to this at the Planning Commission quite well. But we looked at trying to consolidate those curb cuts, but there was no real way to do that it would actually improve the situation. Because inevitably you need to be able to access both of those points. And so if they're consolidated, it just becomes one larger curb cut that's just more disruptive. And so the conclusion between our civil engineer, our traffic consultant, and the county DES staff was that the existing curb cuts were the best way forward.
And this is how can we summarize the gains or the improvements in sustainability for the building? Since we have some, we always expect from circular economy projects and from adaptive reuse to induce a significant improvement in the sustainability of the building. How far are we getting here?
Sure, and I'll speak first, and then I can defer to my client for some additional detail. But site plan condition 18 was the result of some extensive discussions with county staff about green building elements that we were able to introduce with this renovation and that would be subject to sort of measurable standards through things like the LEED program. This is not going to be LEED certified in any fashion, but we're using those standards to ensure that we're meeting the goals of the county here. So that included Energy Star appliances, water sense fixtures, some electrical vehicle charging stations, lighting power reduction, low emitting materials, energy efficient windows, which we all know is important for energy efficiency. That's going to be a big gain there. Light pollution reduction and heat island reduction. And we're going to be submitting reports to the county during construction and after occupancy to report on our progress with all of that. And Mr. Milkey, if you wanted to add anything to that, you're welcome to.
Thank you, Nick. The only two things I would add to that, which I don't believe are in the presentation, but were in some previous presentations, were relating to domestic hot water and our water source vertical air conditioning and heating units that will be replaced in each unit. There will be high efficiency units. It is important to note that they are water source centrally fed units. They are not through wall units, as you would see in a lot of other type of developments. So we have an IntelliHot Gen 2 effectively high efficiency InstaHot water heaters that's currently serve the hotel. We're just installed in the last 2 years, which we intend on continuing to use through the conversion, as well as replacing the units, as I referenced, the VTAC units in each unit, and they are water source fed through Patterson Kelly high efficiency boilers central to the building.
Thank you, Mr. Milkey and Watson. I see. I appreciate the effort to realize as much of sustainability gains as we can. I just encourage you to do even more if you can. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Dorsey. Mr. Dorsey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll just make some summary comments. I don't have any questions, and as Ms. Steinberger and others have mentioned, this is a fairly easy project to lend support to. Adaptive reuse is something that certainly is not in our best interest in all cases. In some cases, we plan for something more significant, particularly by the way of the community benefits that new redevelopment can bring. But in this case, considering the site's location, considering the overall plans for the courthouse neighborhood, this seems to be the ideal place where you want to prolong the utility of the asset by adapting it to meet current and future needs. So I think this is really a great approach. The impact that's going to come from this mostly is going to come in the modest number of students that are going to be generated for it, but we've already got that infrastructure as it previously was a residential building. That's not something that is going to overwhelm our ability to provide. And adaptive reuse, broadly speaking, excuse me, is really going to be a huge benefit for sustainability, not necessarily compared to what new construction might have brought, but compared to what is. In order to bring this thing to market, the energy retrofits that have just been outlined are going to really, reduce the delta between what this building is going to produce in terms of an environmental or an energy output compared to new construction. So I think they're going to be very close. And as Ms. Crystal, so artfully said, not having to build a new building is a significant sustainability benefit that we're getting with this. So really, overall, this is going to be a huge, huge, huge step forward, particularly from the status quo. So I applaud the work that's gone into it. And this is also proof positive that if you can control some of the levers that make the market really out of whack for producing modest price housing, in this case, it's the size of the units, you can actually achieve more affordability by design, and controlling some other market forces, you can deliver something that looks a lot more attainable than what we have elsewhere. So pleased to support the project.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Dorsey. Mr. DeFranti.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am pleased to support the project as well. I appreciate the applicant mentioning that the project is not yet committed to ownership. I am hopeful that it might be. Affordable ownership opportunities are important, and we need to latch onto them. I think colleagues have covered most all of the sustainability benefits, which are important to me. And also the permeable, slight reduction in permeable cover, and also very pleased with the path behind that will allow people to get through the courthouse neighborhood a little more quickly and with a little more sightly passage as folks are walking through. So happy to support it. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you. I actually did want to ask about the milkweed and the butterflies, because I think it's actually a very good point. Would anyone like to address that? I guess it would be the applicant. I don't know who of you would be best to talk about that, but we're going to your landscaping, of course.
Nicholas Cummings here. I can speak briefly. I mean, we have Dr. Burns' comments. They were provided to us in writing as well. Mr. Krebs, our landscape architect, is here and can speak more deeply to his plant palette, but I think that we feel like we have a good list of plants so far. A lot of these decisions are made at final landscape plan, as that would come post-approval during the permitting process, and we're planning to work closely with staff on the final selection of the species, and we are absolutely going to take his comments to heart. Mr. Krebs, did you want to add anything? Then, of course, staff may choose to respond as well.
Good morning. This is Jeff Krebs with VICA, and I don't really have much to add beyond that. We did receive Dr. Burns' comments and are certainly in agreement with him. At this point, of course, we haven't developed the final plant palette, but are fully committed to providing not only a native plant palette, but one that also encourages pollinators. And so the specific species that he recommended, we are certainly aware of, and we are more than happy to accommodate those on site. And the one question about the evergreens, or the comment about the evergreens, we have, there is a desire on the part of staff to help screen some of the parking lots. So the utilization of evergreens will help accomplish that goal, but doesn't preclude us from using the other plant palette and the flowering plants that Dr. Byrne had spoken to. So I think we'll be able to accomplish both goals.
That's great. Thank you. Yeah, no, I'm not going to tell you can't plant evergreens. I understand that, but I think that, paying attention to getting some milkweed in there and some flowers and things for pollinators is just great. More we start to do that, we might start to save some of the monarchs, which is actually something I'd love to be able to help do. So thank you. I think that's it. I find myself interested in, and I think I'll maybe do this offline. The whole adaptive reuse is fascinating. And I am guessing that there were some buildings built in the time this building was built that really aren't holding up very well. But clearly, if this one is able to be reused like this, I'm guessing that I'm gathering it must have been very solidly built. And I'm really glad that we're reusing it. I think that's wonderful, and not tearing it down. This is an exciting project and a huge improvement to what is there now. So thank you all. I think we're ready to vote, unless I see another hand up, but I don't think I do. All right, we have a motion on the table. All in favor, please say aye. Ms. Crystal?
Aye.
Mr. DeFranti?
Aye.
Mr. Dorsey?
Aye.
Mr. Carantonis.
Aye.
Ms. Garvey. Ms. Garvey says aye. All right, motion passes 5-0. Great project. Thank you. Ms. Steinberger, we didn't have any questions for you, but thank you for being here with us today. Appreciate it. All right. Great project. Thank you, guys. I mean, it's just really exciting to see something that is just going to be transformed. I could make a butterfly metaphor, but I won't. All right. Why don't we go on to our next item? Could you call the next item, please, Madam Clerk?
Item 46A and B, Rosalind Holiday Inn, 1900 Fort Myer Drive and 20th Street North. It's a site plan amendment and related ordinances of encroachments to amend, to reallocate hotel and retail gross floor area as residential gross floor area with an increase in height of the connector portion of the building, as well as facilitate phased construction along with zoning modifications.
All right. We're good.
Yes,
Thank you. I think that's it. All right, Mr. Manager, I think we're over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Making the presentation on item 46 will be Matt Pfeiffer of CPHD, assisted by Dennis Sellen and Linda Collier from the Department of Environmental Services. Mr. Pfeiffer?
Thank you very much, Mr. Manager. I will share my screen. Can everyone see this?
Yes, we can. It's very small, but we can see it.
Okay. Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the County Board. My name is Matt Pfeiffer with the Planning Division. The items we'll be discussing today are Site Plan 79, an amendment to the Rosalind Holiday Inn site plan, and some associated encroachments. The site is located at 1900 North Fort Myer Drive. The site is bounded on the north by Lee Highway and the east by Fort Myer Drive and on the west by Nash Street. It is identified on the general land use plan as high residential and subject to note 15, the Rosalind Coordinated Redevelopment District. The site is zoned CO Rosalind. By way of background, the board approved a major site plan amendment, rezoning, and various real estate actions to facilitate the redevelopment of the Rosalind Holiday Inn site on September 24th, 2019. The site plan amendment included 502 residential units, 375 hotel guest rooms, and approximately 14,000 square feet of retail gross floor area. So the proposal before you today is really two major parts. The first is to reallocate 37,141 square feet of hotel gross floor area and 963 square feet of retail gross floor area as residential gross floor area. And the second portion of the request is to phase the construction of the building improvements, amenities, and contributions. So a little bit about the reallocation. As I mentioned, it's about 38,000 square feet of hotel and retail GFA is becoming residential. That results in an additional 21 residential units. There is a minor change in the parking ratios associated with that, although there is no change in the amount of parking being provided.
Excuse me, Madam Chair.
Yes.
And sorry to interrupt, Mr. Pfeiffer, but if it's possible for you to take your presentation out of presenter view, it'll be a lot easier for anybody watching the presentation to actually see your slides.
Oh, my apologies.
No, thank you. Thank you for noting that, Mr. Dorsey. I was trying to figure out what we should do. Thank you.
Okay, let me see if I can make this larger so that everyone can see.
Yeah. Yeah, board members, we have if we've got devices going, we can see it, but for people at home, this is good. Better.
Sure. So a note on the reallocation of uses. So physically what that means is that there's the connector portion of the building that connects the two towers of the project, the residential and the hotel tower. The applicant is proposing to add an additional floor in this area to accommodate the additional 21 residential units. This is the 19th floor. They're accommodating that by decreasing and compressing the slab-to-slab heights on the 18 floors below to accommodate the 19th floor. This results in about a 6-foot increase in the height of this portion. However, there is no effective or net increase in the height of this portion because there was an existing or approved penthouse structure that they were lowering the height of. So the effect is sort of a net neutral amount of height. And of course, there's no increase to the actual building height as the building height is measured from the main roof of the hotel tower. So a little bit about the phasing. The graphic on the left depicts the phasing of the project. The blue portion is phase 1. This is the residential portion. This will be built and occupied in phase 1. Also in phase 1, the hotel tower, the yellow and gray portions will be built. The yellow portion indicates what is referred to as a warm lit shell. And what this means is that this portion will be built and fit out, but not occupied at this time during phase 1. The gray portion is what's referred to as a cold dark shell. This will be built, but it will not be fit out, meaning there will be no elevator access, no electrical or mechanical service. However, for all intents and purposes, the building will appear from the exterior as a finished building. It will be skinned and there will be facades. So a little bit about the phasing of the streetscapes. The diagram on the right depicts the phasing of the streetscapes. The portion in the blue is streetscape that will be provided by building core and shell for the residential in phase 1. And the green depicts the streetscape that will be provided by the last CO for the certificate of occupancy for the residential portion of the building. Also noted, this is not on this diagram, but the off-site improvement that connects the cycle track being built on the Fort Myer Drive frontage will be completed at the same timing as the Fort Myer Drive frontage improvement here again, and that timing is the final CO for the residential portion. So again, just to reiterate, in phase 1, which is the residential occupancy, phase 2 being the hotel occupancy. Phase 1, all project streetscapes will be provided. The Fort Myer Drive cycle track and off-site shared use path will be provided. Half of the cash contributions for affordable housing, open space, and transportation will be provided, and sustainable design elements associated with the residential portion will be provided in phase 1. Phase 2, the pedestrian passageway through the block and the plaza associated will be provided. The other half of the cash payments for affordable housing, open space, and transportation will be provided, as well as the cash payment for public art. Sustainable design elements associated with the hotel will be provided, and the loading dock management plan will be provided in phase 2 as well. And a little bit about that. The reason staff is supportive of deferring that until the hotel comes online is that this is a non-standard condition, and it was recommended last year, and the board approved it, associated with the particular impacts that arise from hotel use instead of the residential. So we were comfortable with having that deferred until phase 2. So a little bit, in addition to the site plan amendment, a number of encroachments are being requested. Just very briefly, these include undergrounding electric vaults on the east side of Nash Street, a residential canopy feature on the east side of Nash Street, 3 raised planters and steps located at the intersection of Nash Street and Lee Highway, landscape walls located at the intersection of Lee Highway and Fort Myer Drive, bay windows projecting over the western portion of Fort Myer Drive, and a hotel canopy feature along the western portion of Fort Myer Drive. So a little bit about the public engagement. This was a minor site plan amendment, so we did not take this to the SPRC. However, we did reach out to all of the stakeholders that were involved with the SPRC process a year ago. Those included the North Roslyn Civic Association, Rayfom, the Turnberry Tower condos, the Dakota condos, and the Georgetown Vista condos. We received very little feedback, although I did have some conversations with some residents in both the Dakota condominiums and the Turnberry Tower condominiums, just to answer some basic questions about the proposal. The only official word that we heard was from the Dakota condos, just reiterating that they had no formal comment on the proposal. And then in addition to that, we sent out public notices as required and posted placards around the site as required. So our recommendation is to adopt the attached ordinance to approve the proposed site plan amendment and to enact the attached ordinances of encroachment. That concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. All right, we'll go to our applicant.
Hello, good morning. This is Bob Bushkoff from Ditmar. Can you hear me?
We can, Bob. Good morning.
And I think I'm going to turn my camera on because I like to see you as well as maybe you like to see me. So we are on a video conference. So yeah. Good morning, Madam Chair and County Board members. Thank you for taking the time to give us a couple minutes to talk about our project. First and foremost, this has been a tumultuous time for all of us, so we certainly hope that you and your family and everybody are safe and doing well. And just to provide you with some backup, I think Matt and Dennis and staff have done a good job in the board report of kind of outlining why we're asking for this site plan amendment. I'm not really going to get into the encroachments because that's pretty standard stuff. But as you can imagine, back in February, March, when all this happened, when the pandemic started, we were hot and heavy into our planning and our development plans and our scheduling, etc. We had originally scheduled for the hotel to close down in August. I think we had talked about that. But when the pandemic hit, we went from 100% occupancy in one day to 0% occupancy the next day. So with that unfortunate occurrence, we ended up shutting down the hotel in March. And again, and still at that time, not having a clue what the future held. We didn't know if we were going to continue with the project, if we were going to reopen the hotel, if there was going to be a hotel market or anything. But as time passed, we took a step back. We talked to our development partners, our advisors, the hotel folks that we've been working with, and we kind of stopped and said, okay, how can we redirect the ship here a little bit to make sure that we can continue with this project, continue to go forward, and hopefully within 4 to 5 years, produce and deliver a fantastic mixed-use project on this site. And so with that, we realized, again, none of us have a crystal ball. If you do, tell us where we're going to be in about 4 years or 2 years or 3 years. The thinking is that there's going to be a little less demand for hotel, possibly, maybe a little bit more risky. Still good demand for residential. So the idea was to shift some of the risk from the hotel to the residential, be a little bit more conservative on that. And also take it, looking at what we saw the long-term market to be and try to address those market demands. So with that, as Matt said, we modified the uses somewhat, not greatly, although the 35,000 square feet sounds like a lot. This is a 800,000 square foot building, so it's not a huge portion of it. We only added 20-something units to the residential, but we feel it gives us the cautious optimism that we can move ahead with this project, both from a physical perspective, from being able to build it, and especially being able to finance it. We're pretty much on phone calls with lenders on a weekly basis just to see where they are and let them know what we're doing. And if you went and tried to finance a hotel now, a new hotel now, you'd be laughed out of the room, basically. The lenders have been spending all their time looking back, dealing with their existing issues. They are now starting to look ahead and go, okay, there is some light at the end of the tunnel. And so, we're talking about a project that will deliver 3-4 years from now. The expectation is that we'll get the virus somehow under control. People will start traveling again. There'll be a demand for hotel. But with that being said, we're able to bifurcate the construction where we can marshal our assets, both physically and financially, to get the superstructure built, as Matt was showing, we're going to build the entire superstructure, but we're only going to finish a portion of it, that portion being the residential. So we can focus our efforts on getting that residential up and operating, starting to produce some income, so then that operation can support the completion and the financing of the hotel. And again, it gives us some flexibility as we move forward. It gives time for the financial markets to rebound, to come back, to give us hopefully the ability to finance the hotel. So that's it's really driven by the pandemic. And so we're just trying to address those concerns. It's still a great project. Again, I'm happy to address any of the specifics relative to the phasing, relative to any other questions that you might have, but that's really what's driving this. So we're really, the amazing thing is throughout all this, we're really not behind schedule from a construction perspective. We anticipated closing the hotel in August and starting demolition. Unfortunately, we closed it in March, but we did start working on the 20th Street utility relocation in August. We're starting on the demolition. We're stripping out the building. We're going to be taking down the pedestrian bridge across Fort Myer Drive at the end of this month and the 1st of November. We're going to take down the tower the middle of December. We're going to start. So we're right on schedule as far as that's concerned, which is the amazing thing. I really can't believe we are, but it's pretty cool. So we're going to keep plowing forward and getting that going and getting this project up, getting the residential open. And then again, with our optimistic view and talking with the hotel folks, they're saying we're hopefully be back to the 2019 pre-pandemic hotel market, maybe by 23, maybe by 24. And so by that time, that's when we'd be rolling into the hotel to get it to fit out. And so hopefully we could just roll right from the residential right into the hotel and just keep moving forward. So that's why we're asking for this amendment in general.
Thank you, Mr. Bushkoff.
Thank you.
All right, no, appreciate it. All right, I think if the applicant doesn't have anything more, and thank you for that. It's fascinating times we're in right now. We'll see, move to our speakers if we have some. Do we have some speakers, Madam Clerk?
Yes, Madam Chair, we have one public speaker.
Okay, we'll take the speaker. Yeah.
Karishma Mehta.
Mm-hmm.
Karishma? Okay, perhaps Karishma has not joined us. It does not appear that Karishma is with us.
Okay, thank you. And I should have verified that we don't have any, do we have commissioners with us? I should have verified that.
I don't believe we do it for this item. No.
I don't think so. Okay, all right, thank you. All right. Colleagues, I think the conversation is with us. Questions, comments for our staff, for the applicant? You know what? While you're thinking of them, let's get a motion on the table. How about that? Who wants to make the motion?
I'm happy to, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. DeFranti.
Sure. So I will move the county manager's recommendation with respect to item 46A. And 46B, that we adopt the attached ordinance to approve the site plan amendment subject to all previously approved conditions and the amended conditions of the ordinance with respect to A. And with respect to B, I'll move that we approve the ordinance of encroachment as described in item 46B. I think that's sufficient, and I'm sure our attorney will let us know.
Sounds good to me. If Mr. McIsaac doesn't jump on us, I think we're good. Is there a second?
Yeah, second.
Thank you. Moved in second. Now, Mr. DeFranti, you want to speak to your motion?
Overall, this with the supplemental, I'm supportive of this. I particularly appreciate that the supplemental report for 46A was added. We all know that the market has changed for hotels, and certainly residential is important. We approved the project 7 months ago or 8 months ago, and I think it's still a solid project. I appreciate the bike path, but also the environmental benefits of the project, as well as There will, of course, be other community benefits in the form of housing that will be part of it. So happy to support the project. I will have a couple of questions, but I'll yield.
Okay, let's see if anybody else has got some questions at the moment. I do see now Mr. Carantona's hand. Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I appreciate all the effort that has been invested in this adaptation to the current very, very adverse market conditions to continue with a plan and the investment and the construction of this building. I have only one preliminary question. So the public benefit split for housing are half, with what will be built right now, the housing portion, let's say, and then the other half will materialize or will be provided when the hotel will be actually built from inside. So what is the thinking behind the split between this 50-50 split between these two phases?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Board member, yeah, I can address that briefly. So in terms of the cash contributions, splitting them up between the two phases was actually fairly simple. We had already had the cash payments for all three sort of subject areas: open space, transportation, and affordable housing, split between it was the first certificate of occupancy for the residential, and then the last certificate of occupancy for the hotel. So it was a fairly easy transition, just saying, okay, we're going to receive half of the cash payments prior to the first CO for the residential, and then again for the last CO for the hotel. So that really did not change in that matter, in that respect.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Ms. Crystal.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to both our staff and to Mr. Bushkoff for joining us today and for the very clear explanation of why this change. I found it heartening because I think what it comes across loud and clear is that you would be just as motivated as we as a community would be to finalize or finish the hotel version of the project, and very much incented to not make sure that to ensure that it doesn't linger. I wanted to ask a question for you a little bit about construction, and then a question really mostly for our staff about the Gateway Park contributions. So first, I'm hearing that you all are in the neighborhood having these implosion meetings with the nearby residents, which sounds like you all have done a strong job of keeping everybody aware of the milestones with this very large project, right? A demo and construction of a project of this size is absolutely can have impact on the neighbors. I'm trying to get my head around what kind of construction impacts neighbors and others in Roslyn can expect with this phased version of development. The way that you and Matt have described for us the lit shell, it sounds like, hopefully not too much heavy construction when it comes time to actually fit out the hotel piece. But could you just tell us a little bit about what those who are looking forward to your project because they're looking forward to the end of construction can expect to go differently as a result of staging this?
So the primary impact of the phasing relative to the build out of the hotel portion will be felt on the Fort Myers Drive side of the project. The Nash Street side of the project will be entirely complete. That's the residential portion of the project. That's where the service dock is, et cetera. So Nash Street, and as staff said, all the streetscapes around the building will be completed through phase one. On the Fort Myers Drive side of the site, we will still have a equipment hoist, a material hoist, a labor hoist. So it's going to be a 38-story building, 36-story building. We're going to have to get materials up into those floors. And so you will have construction activity on the Fort Myers Drive side of the building during the second phase. At some point, it will be limited. At some point, the hoist will be removed because then all the materials it will essentially be an interior job, right? So the yellow portions of the building that you saw in the exhibit as a warm lit shell, those, again, the warm lit shell and the cold dark shell essentially are unfinished space. It's like if you had built an office building, but you didn't have an office tenant. It's essentially what that space will look like. So we will be coming back in, finishing the hotel lobby, finishing the ballroom level, the meeting spaces, and then finishing the hotel rooms in that gray area, right? But as you saw, there's still a lot of blue area on that side, on that tower too, because they're residential units. And that's one of the reasons that we're raising the connector so that we can provide to have those units on that side. So it's really just going to be impact on Fort Myers Drive. We're still going to be able to have the sidewalks open, at any given time. But that's really the impact of it. So once phase one is done, you're really looking at 2/3 of the project being done at that point, because you've got the superstructure done. And that's really the riskiest part, the most impactful to the community. After that is interior construction.
Okay. That's really helpful. Thank you. And help me a little bit on the timing. So when the apartment building is complete, you will will you have tenants moving in during hotel construction or even before hotel construction? Okay.
That's the idea. Hopefully it'll be highly occupied by then.
Yeah.
while the
as you were
hotel
saying,
is under construction.
finance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As you understand, you realize when we're doing even just plain residential construction, we can occupy floors that when we're still doing construction 3 floors above.
Yeah.
So you occupy in phases, right? We get partial COs for this floor and then that floor, and we'll be able to do the same thing while we're doing the hotel portion. The amenities for the residential portion are totally separate, and the operation of the residential building is totally separate from the operation and then the amenities of the hotel portion.
Okay.
So again, there's noise and all that, but generally speaking, from a use perspective, we'll be able to occupy it, yes.
Great. Okay.
Now the hotel,
really
the hotel really has to be done 100% to occupy. That's why it's a little bit different, right? So
that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that actually brings me to my next question, which I think is largely for Mr. Pfeiffer and for our staff. I think I understand the need to break up the community benefits, right, based on the market realities. I should take a moment and just commend both the applicant and Mr. Pfeiffer for working to ensure that full bike facility can be built. I think that one's really important, and I know it's important in our community. But I did want to talk a little bit about Gateway Park. For me, anyway, I really think about that community benefit as being a way to meet the needs that probably over 1,000 residents, right, are going to have for green space. We know that the Realize Roslyn Sector Plan was all about big park investments rather than sort of one-offs of open space affiliated with a project. But that does mean phasing already, even in the best case scenario. And now we're talking about phasing this project, which was going to be contributing, I think, really the bulk of that Gateway Park money. So I'm hoping Mr. Pfeiffer can speak a little bit on behalf of our Parks and Rec staff to talk a bit about what this means for Gateway Park. Does this mean that we are deferring the planning as well as design and construction entirely? Does getting this in 2 tranches mean that we can move forward with design but not construction, move forward with some scaled down improvements? Help me understand what the consequences, although it sounds like we all very much hope that this is not going to, what this phasing adds to the project's completion and the delivery of those community benefits can be measured in months, not years. But given the way we are approving it, I think we have to be prepared that it could. So help me understand what this phasing means for the realization of a new Gateway Park for the Roslyn community.
Sure. Thank you, board member. The very short answer is that it shouldn't have any impact. And so to elaborate on that, the way the open space, the cash contributions for open space will work, which are earmarked for Gateway Park, is that they will have to contribute $500,000 for planning and design prior to the first building permit for phase 1. So that timing is not changing at all. As long as we have that up front, and we should be getting that shortly, we can proceed as planned with the planning and design for Gateway Park. So that $500,000 was earmarked. Now the total contribution was $5 million. So $2.25 million will be due by the first certificate of occupancy for the residential. So we should have $2.75 million towards Gateway Park by the first occupancy for phase 1. Now, the only thing that would potentially be deferred would be the remaining $2.25 million that would come with the occupancy for the hotel. We don't anticipate that having a major impact. Prior to the pandemic, the construction of Gateway Park was shown as being around the 2027-2028 timeframe. Given Mr. Bushkoff's proposed scheduling, we think that he will move forward with construction and occupancy of the hotel portion prior to that timeframe. So it really should not have any impact.
Okay, thank you for that answer. I think that concludes my questions. I feel assuaged in that area because this is such an incredibly important feature for the Roslyn community. I'm prepared to support this, and I thank the applicant for the explanation, for your efforts to keep the board and the community well apprised of construction timelines. And certainly are wishing you all luck, right? As well as, by extension, obviously, we're really invested as a community in this project for the opportunity to realize the redevelopment of Roslyn, pardon the pun, for the community benefits, and of course, for the asset that I know this hotel and conference center will provide once we are all going to hotels and conference centers again. So thank you. And that concludes my questions and remarks.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Good news for the park. Mr. Dorsey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to applaud the developer, Mr. Bushkoff, and staff really for responding, very well based on market conditions that I know vexed you. I realize the developer is carrying a lot of risk with what's happened with the hotel market, but I appreciate staff working cooperatively to make sure that risk wasn't then shared with the community in terms of losing community benefits that have been promised. And I think this is really just a great example of folks working together toward a disparate goals, but common values. So thanks to everybody. The one thing I wanted to flag moving forward, and I all hope that this doesn't materialize, but if there is something in the hotel market moving forward, which presents some issues with Mr. Bushkoff's optimism, I just want to flag, because many of us as board members may not be around and staff may turn over, that we shouldn't really have a seamless process to consider an adaptive reuse or a change of use from the hotel to a full residential. So I want to just make very clear that we went through an extensive process that looked at the impacts of this project with both the hotel use and also the full-time residential use. And if somehow circumstances in the future require at least asking the question as to whether something should be done differently with this property, hopefully we don't take the administrative route to just look at it without opening it up to just broader conversation. Doesn't mean that the answer would be no, doesn't mean that it would be a poison pill, but it should be looked at comprehensively, given to honor the way it was comprehensively looked at the outset.
Mr. Dorsey, I can respond to that just very briefly to say that, if the worst case scenario happens and the hotel portion were to, Mr. Bushkoff were considering converting it to residential, it would require a major site plan amendment, and so it would go back through the SPRC process.
Terrific.
Yeah, and we understand that, Mr. Dorsey, as well.
Great. All right, all my board members are getting the answers they want. This is good. Mr. DeFranti, back to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of questions. One for Mr. Pfeiffer and also Mr. Bushkoff. It's regarding the language in the supplemental. Very much appreciate building out the bike path as a consideration that several of our residents wrote to us about. Am I right in understanding that it's just a matter of engineering? We have not yet determined whether or not it's possible to build the full 16 feet wide. Is that why the language sort of signaling that the manager could make a determination that it would be a slightly different path, but still an attempt to address the bike connectivity issue? Is it just we haven't figured out the engineering yet, or can you provide any sense of why that part of the supplemental language?
Mr. DeFranti, that was an issue that's actually language that was remaining from the approval last year. And if Mr. Bushkoff and his civil engineers can probably chime in with additional detail on this, but my recollection is that there was a utility conflict that was discovered along that frontage. And so, we were hoping to get a full 16 feet, but we inserted language and the applicant agreed to language such that we would try for the full 16 feet, but if the utility conflict became such that it could not be overcome, that we would be willing to accept something somewhat less than 16 feet for the shared use path.
Got it. Thank you, Matt. Mr. Bushkoff, can you just add any, just a little reassurance? The language is there, but just we're still expecting to get as close to 16 feet as we can, and the intent is to make sure that the bike connectivity in addition to pedestrian is all set. Is that fair?
Yeah, that is fair. That is the intent. Again, there are some utility issues in Fort Myer Drive that are inflexible, if you will, to a certain degree. And again, the idea is that the bike path, would connect from Fort Myer Drive in front of Turnberry along to the Ames site too. And there's some issues again in front of just the way the Turnberry building is. So there's a offset in front of Turnberry. So there's a few engineering issues. And again, Karen White over at Walter Phillips and her team are working hard. And again, the intent is to provide the widest path that we can provide.
Great, thank you, appreciate it. Just thought I understood that, but I really appreciate the reassurance. And then there's language in the staff report, I think this is for staff, Mr. Pfeiffer, regarding the mid-block pedestrian passageway. If I remember the project initial consideration, I spent more time with those drawings than many projects, I'll say. And I read regarding without the hotel, you want to make sure it's sort of safe and there's sufficient activity there. But we're still on track that would be pursued. Is it safety in fact, or are there some other factors involved in holding on the mid-block passageway?
Thank you, Mr. DiFerranti. That I think safety is the main issue. Just in the fact that while the pathway is adjacent to the hotel lobby and the retail use, and while it'll be fit out in phase one, I think there will still be some work that needs to occur during phase two to that portion, as well as construction staging all around that area. And so it really would not be safe to have that portion, that pedestrian passageway through the building open during the construction of phase two, essentially.
Got it. Great. I appreciate it. And then this just really quickly, maybe for Ms. Collier, is it the encroachment ordinance? I looked and I understand the physical piece of it. This is coming back to us because when we passed this the first time, the engineering and the detailed engineering and the specifications had not been worked out. Is that why the encroachment ordinance as a whole?
It's being brought at this point because the developer came to us and said that, as they progressed, they needed these certain encroachments. So we did not have, Real Estate Bureau did not have this information before the first time this was considered. I can't comment on to whether it was available or not, but it was not brought to our attention at that time.
Nicholas Cummings here on behalf of the applicant as well. I can add a little color on that. I think that Ms. Collier would agree that we don't typically look at these encroachments until the legal interest upon which we are encroaching exists. So we do a certain number of encroachments with the approval of a site plan if we have the legal interest, existing that we're going to encroach upon at that point. All these encroachments are for features of the site plan that you approved with the approval last year. It's just that now we're coming in and we've either dedicated right away or new easements exist or something. And so now the legal interest exists that we are encroaching upon. And now you can approve an encroachment on that. That's how I consider these sort of post-approval encroachments to work. And Ms. Collier can correct me if I had any of that wrong.
Great. Now that satisfies me. I just was curious because there was statements in the report that said no additional extensive difference in the amount of area that we're that is necessary. So physically, it doesn't seem different, but the legal and technical had to be worked out. So I just wanted to confirm that that was why we were seeing Part B. Thanks. Those are all my questions and all my, I don't know, we've had concluding comments. I'm fully supportive of the project in light of the change in the market, and I appreciate the supplemental helping to address community concerns. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Great, thank you. Mr. Bushkoff, I just had a question about the cold, dark tower. How is it going to appear at night for a while? Is it going to be, are there going to be any lights on that tower at all? I'm just wondering how it's going to be at night.
That's a good question. I mean, again, it will not be, there will not be power in that, on those upper floors. So, but it'll be fully enclosed. It'll be fully sheathed in the glass skin. So I guess at night it would be dark.
It would be dark.
I imagine there'll still be some lights on the roof and all from just a navigation standpoint from the airlines and things like that.
That's where I was headed.
So,
thank you.
I certainly can look into that. I don't know the exact answer to that as I sit here.
No, I'm sure. I just want to make sure it's on everybody's radar scope because I think you have to have for navigation things. You're supposed to have.
There will be certain code issues, correct?
Yeah, great. Just checking that. Thank you very much. All right, I'm fine. Yeah, this is it's just an example of I think it's pretty smooth considering what's been going on. A little changing of a little pivot right now for all of us, and important to do as we continue to move forward. I'm really glad, Mr. Bushkoff, you talked that you're continuing to move forward and continuing to be on schedule, which is happening with a number of our large projects. And as we get into these really difficult times, it sort of shows the underlying health of our community, and that's important, I think, for everybody. So appreciate you continuing to move forward with this and making it happen, in a different way, but continue to make it happen. Thank you. All right, I think we're ready to
Madam
Chair, our attorney has a hand up.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I didn't even see that. Oh, it's way down and subtle in the corner. Mr. McIsaac. Yes. What do we got?
Madam Chair, just a housekeeping matter. I wanted to make sure that the motion included the supplemental report on 46A to include the amended motion, amended condition 66. I wasn't sure the motion included a reference to the supplemental report.
I think Mr. DeFranti made the motion. I bet if you say yes, we're good. Will that work?
Absolutely. Incorporating that into the motion, please, Madam Chair.
Very good.
All right. If our council is happy, we're all happy. Good. All right. Thank you. Motion is before us. All in favor, please say aye. Ms. Crystal.
Aye.
Mr. DeFranti.
Aye.
Mr. Dorsey.
Aye.
Mr. Carantonis.
Aye.
Ms. Garvey, I say aye as well. Thank you very much. Passes 5-0. Thank you all. Everybody stay well. Nice to see you, Bob. Take care.
Thank you very much. Nice to see you all too. Have a great day.
No, everybody take care. Thank you. All right. I think that brings us to our next item. Would you like to introduce that, Madam Clerk?
Yes, item number 47. In FBC 11, it's an amendment to the Arlington County Zoning Ordinance Article 11.2, Section 902, CPN FBC, Columbia Pike Neighborhoods Form-Based Code Districts to adjust the area median income limit for affordable home ownership units and to stipulate standards for condominium conversion of affordable rental units developed under the NFBC.
Thank you. Mr. Manager, I know you have recently changed your recommendation to be deferring this item indefinitely, but I'm assuming you may have a presentation to make as well. I know a lot of work has gone into this.
Yes, Madam Chair. Staff will have a presentation in a minute. I wanted to make a few comments before staff made their short presentation. As you noted, we were intending to bring forward today an amendment to the neighborhood form-based code that would expand affordable home ownership opportunities along Columbia Pike and ensure consistency with the adopted county board policies. And those policies are part of the neighborhood form-based code and also the affordable housing master plan. So staff spent about 3 years researching and also engaging in a public process We had webinars, commission meetings, a lot of community organizations were involved in developing the recommendation. And many of those who expressed opposition recently have stated this recommendation would result in a massive displacement of current renters earning up to 60% of AMI as a result of the possible actions by Mark's owners to convert their rental buildings to condos. So staff, in doing their work, what they did is they focused on historical data analysis and a lot of conversations with the development community to support the proposal. And, you know, despite all that work, we still had members of the community that were skeptical. And as you noted, I'm recommending deferral. I wanted to state that I still stand by the work that was done by staff. Their work supported the adopted policies of the county board. And the policies in question were adopted 5 years ago on the Affordable Housing Master Plan and 8 years ago on the form-based code. And the situation is both home ownership and increased access to rental units are goals of both of those plans. With a fixed supply, however, those goals are often in tension with each other. So while those tensions aren't new, they're real. And I think we've done our best to try to navigate through that. But I would just say, unfortunately, in some of the conversation, a few of the members have commented that staff were off on a mission of their own, which I couldn't disagree with more. And I just really wanted to say, while we can disagree about our approaches here, I just wanted to state that staff are really focused on the mission they were given by the board. They have behaved professionally and doing their best to focus on what is good for the community. Our staff and county are committed to racial equity and addressing the impacts of what are clearly systemic land use policies that can promote racism. And in addition, we have a lot of work, as you know, going on right now for dialogues on race and equity. So I'm hoping that that could be the ushering in of an era where we're talking with each other, listening, and having conversations. With that as background, I'm going to ask Melissa Danowski to have a brief presentation of just a few slides. So Ms. Danowski.
Thank you, Mr. Schwartz. Ms. Danowski.
Thank you. I'm actually going to hand it to my colleague, Akiria Brown.
Okay, great.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Manager, and good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. My name is Akiria Brown, and I am joined by my colleagues, Melissa Danowski, also in the Housing Division, and Matt Matusik in the Planning Division. And I will go ahead and quickly share my slides here.
That works.
Great. So staff is here to recommend the deferral of the proposed amendment to increase the area median income limits for ownership units within the neighborhood form-based code. Both the county's neighborhood area plan and the Affordable Housing Master Plan set forth goals to incentivize the production of moderately priced ownership housing. Both policies specifically recommend encouraging the production of units between 80 and 120% of the area median income. In June, the County Board authorized advertisement for this item for the October public hearing. The goal was to allow for further public input. Throughout the summer, staff implemented the County Board direction in public engagement and held one-on-one meetings and meetings with community group stakeholders as stated on this slide. On September 15th, staff held a public webinar, and following that event, staff again met with commissions providing information on this item. Based upon those engaging discussions and response to public feedback related to the AMI increase, staff recommends an indefinite deferral of this item. Further, as established by additional guidance from the County Board, staff will work with stakeholders to revisit the feasibility of tools needed to enable homeownership opportunities along Columbia Pike. In addition to other housing-specific initiatives, The Affordable Housing Master Plan, as referenced previously in this presentation, is now 5 years old, and staff will be conducting a review during FY 2021. The review is intended to incorporate updated census and market trend data, review status of Affordable Housing Master Plan goals and objectives, and update strategies and actions needed to achieve those goals and objectives. This review, coupled with community input, may identify major work items such as reevaluating the priorities and policies of this plan. At the conclusion of the Affordable Housing Master Plan review, staff will develop a work plan to address the updates over time. County board members will receive an update on the process at briefings scheduled this week. This concludes our presentation.
Thank you very much, Ms. Brown.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, do we have commissions here to speak on this today?
Madam Chair, I believe Mr. Berkey is here with us to speak on this item.
From the Housing Commission, yeah, Mr. Berkey?
Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to figure out the technology.
Oh, that's fine.
Apologies.
No problem.
Yeah, so I'll try to be brief because the board has certainly heard from the community at great length about this item. And I want to start by briefly affirming what you said, Madam Chair, as well as the manager, that there was a tremendous amount of outreach to the community on this item. I got, it was flagged to me as the Housing Commission Chair back in February, and have been in contact with county board members since then. So I just do want to appreciate the tremendous amount of work that staff has done on this item. Even right before the Housing Commission meeting, we had CPHD staff reach out to me, and I was able to ask additional questions. So I just really want to emphasize that. That being said, the Housing Commission, voted at our meeting on October 7th to recommend that the board not, move forward with this item on a vote of 7-3, and then also recommending that the board direct staff to restudy the issue of affordable home ownership in the Affordable Housing Master Plan review. There were a few folks who did not agree with that were comfortable enough with, the staff proposal and the work they had done and are concerned about home ownership. But a majority of the commission is just very troubled by the policy choices we have to make here. And I think it's fair to say that the commission, like some folks in the Planning Commission and like a lot of the folks that you heard, just very troubled about any risk to the few market rate affordable apartments we have left, especially on Columbia Pike. And I think for me personally, the most compelling part of this was that, it's in the form-based code. It's not a site plan. So there's really, the idea is that once the process starts moving forward, there's really no way to dial it back, right? That's kind of the point of the form-based code. And so that was kind of the most troubling thing to me. And so the last thing I'll add is, again, staff really worked hard on this, and we really appreciate that. But I think kind of the process worked here because they really engaged with the community, and the community said, we just are not comfortable with this aligning with our values of making sure that the folks who are currently on the Pike are going to remain on the Pike in those market rate affordable opportunities. And so, it's a lot of work, and that's frustrating, but I think the process worked. And I'd like to see us maybe talk about the path forward here, because I firmly believe we need to continue to think about affordable home ownership opportunities. And with that, I'll turn it back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Berkey. And then, Madam Clerk, I believe we have our Planning Commission here as well, maybe Ms. Steinberg.
That is correct.
Okay. Ms. Steinberg, welcome back.
Sorry, my camera was closed. Good morning again. Yes, the Planning Commission heard this matter at our October meeting. Candidly, unlike the SPRC process that we just discussed earlier in the meeting, there was a lot more discussion on this topic and a lot more variance in opinions. The letter in terms that I, received kind of from our Planning Commission with regards to this topic is a little bit moot in light of the staff's updated recommendation to defer this matter. So I think that personally, I think that is the right decision. As you've seen from that letter, this was a close vote with a couple of abstentions. The Planning Commission did ultimately determine by a vote of 6-4 that they would recommend going forward with staff's recommendation to change the AMI allocation. As I said, it was a very close vote and there was a lot of discussion on that. I would say that even for those folks who voted in favor of this, it was a close decision on their parts as well in terms of how they want to proceed. I appreciate what the county manager said with regards to the tension between increasing market rate affordable units from a rental perspective and increasing opportunities for affordable home purchase options. I do appreciate that there's going to be an inherent conflict in those matters, and I think that's something that the Planning Commission is aware of. Ultimately, we do appreciate all of the outreach that staff did to the community. We heard, we heard from a lot of community members on this topic. Certainly the community members that we heard from, while they may largely disagreed with the staff recommendation to make this change, they were appreciative of the opportunity and staff's level of engagement with the community groups. So I think the process, as the prior speaker just said, is working in terms of having that engagement. I also think that if this, for myself personally, I think for others in the commission, if this recommendation were happening not at a time of a national pandemic where we're all very concerned about sort of the disproportionate impact, especially now, of the ongoing pandemic on those individuals in a lower economic place, then I think maybe this might be a different discussion. But in this moment, I really struggled with what the timing of this change. In addition, with the ongoing plan to be looking at the affordable housing master plan, this seemed like a decision that maybe should be rolled into that discourse as well. So we have the kind of opportunity to continue to study that. I can answer any questions, but that's sort of where the Planning Commission ended up. Again, prior to the change in the recommendation for deferral.
Thank you. Thank you. That's very helpful. And then Ms. Jacobs, I don't think we have any other commissioners here with us today, right?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everybody. Colleagues, I think I would love to get the motion on the table and then have discussion.
Public
if that's
speakers,
all right.
Madam
We have
Chair.
no public speakers,
Public
Madam
speakers.
Feeling I'd forgotten something. Thank you, colleagues. I'm so sorry. I'm sure we have some speakers and we will take them.
We do. We have a number of
Sorry,
public
thank
speakers.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, our first speaker is Komet Solomon, followed by Austin McNair.
Hi, this is Kumail. So I'd like to introduce myself as a relatively new immigrant to the United States, and I lived in one of the affordable units during the last 10 years. These units helped me to start my life in the United States, and my job was in Washington, D.C., and I needed to commute every day early in the morning to that job. Also, I needed to support family members, 5 family members, and without having an affordable unit, I would have not been able to help them to support themselves and also to start a new life in the United States. So increasing the AMI limit, I would say, will prevent them from, or will prevent me and many other people to live in these places again, or to start kind of their life in an easy way. Also, as a person who doesn't have earn a lot, having any start in other places will be hard for me. I would say that it would also encourage owners to convert their rental units into non-affordable condos. I also would like to say that I'm here speaking on behalf of several friends and neighbors who told me to convey their voices to you and to show their opposition to this policy of increasing the AMI limits. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Solomon. Next speaker.
Our next speaker is Austin McNair, followed by Karishma Mehta.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. My name is Austin McNair, and I'm the president of the Arlington Mill Civic Association. This morning, I'd like to join others from my community, including several other presidents from civic associations along Columbia Pike, in urging the board to reject the original staff proposal for this amendment to the Columbia Pike Neighborhoods Form-Based Code. When I first read the amendment aimed to alter the AMI standards for the affordable ownership within Columbia Pike's Neighborhoods Form-Based Code by eliminating the 60% AMI tier and setting new tiers at 80% and 100% AMI, I'll just say I was frankly stunned. I asked myself, who do they imagine will be able to take advantage of these 80% and 100% AMI rates? It's certainly not many of my current neighbors in the Arlington Mill community. And that's the problem. This amendment opens up the possibility for thousands of our neighbors to be displaced permanently from our community. Even more is the cruel irony that was mentioned earlier by your staff member that this amendment would be considered as our community and country is being ravaged by this vicious pandemic, a time when we rely so often on low-income earning essential workers to keep daily life up and running for all of us. So speaking on behalf of my community, we simply don't want to live in Arlington where the people that work here can't afford to live here also. Arlington is already dangerously close to falling off this balance beam, and that is not a future we desire, and it is the job of the county board to represent all of us who currently live in Arlington to ensure that they have a future here. Bringing it back to my community, the Arlington Mill neighborhood is already a densely populated and beautifully diverse neighborhood. We do not need regulatory changes that will adversely affect what is already so wonderful about this part of Arlington. Let's leave it alone. If there's any possibility here that this amendment that was proposed, as many of us think that there is, that it would change, that change could open up a dark future where thousands of our neighbors are displaced, you should shut this door now. Let's protect Arlington's working class. Let's protect our neighbors. And thank you for having me and allowing me to speak today.
Oh, thank you, Mr. McNair. Next speaker.
Our next speaker is Karishma Mehta, followed by John Snyder.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. My name is Karishma Mehta, and I'm a preschool teacher and Columbia Pike resident running for District 49 in the Virginia House of Delegates next year. I'm here to thank all of the community members and activists who work to push back against Arlington County Zone Ordinance Article 11.2, Section 902 CPN-FBC Columbia Pike neighborhoods, which would cause continued harm to the families on Columbia Pike where I reside with my mother and my sister. As a working class preschool teacher and resident of Columbia Pike, I'm strongly opposed to further consideration of this proposed amendment. Just as poverty is a policy choice, so is gentrification of Black, Brown, and working class families. So my question to the county board is there a home for working class renters in Arlington, as is for the select home owning few? We're living through a time where many of our Arlingtonian neighbors fear eviction, job loss, food insecurity, and medical debt. At this critical moment, it should be our goal to eliminate economic barriers for our families here in Arlington and ensure that they stay in their homes. Our commitment to the working people of this district, and we must continue to hold developers accountable. In that light, I urge the county board to protect working families by partnering with the General Assembly on the following: universal rent control and ban on evictions, opening vacant developer buildings and hotels to provide emergency shelter for unhoused Arlingtonians, tenant right of refusal, funding for housing cooperatives and community land trusts, and divestment from large corporate development monopolies. Columbia Pike is known as Main Street for a reason. We're a hardworking, racially diverse, multi-generational working class area. It's time the Arlington County Board take direct measures to protect Main Street, not just luxury developers and the affluent few. Thank you for your time, and I yield back.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is John Snyder, followed by Audrey Clement.
Good morning. My name is John Snyder. I've been involved in the Pike planning and development process for over 15 years in a variety of roles. Today I'm speaking as an individual. But I was also part of the planning group that put the Pike neighborhoods plan together. In all of these different plans, we've been looking at some very basic principles, the first of which is do no harm. From the beginning in the form-based code, it applied only to commercial areas for the simple reason that we did not want to provide any incentives that would push out existing residents. So the places that are being redeveloped under the original form-based code are areas where no one lived, so no one is being displaced. So far, we have zero displacement from form-based code projects. A second principle is to respect the neighborhoods and the neighbors. In this case, it's particularly important because the form-based code works out all sorts of different mitigations in advance. It sets out the rules, and once the developer follows those rules, the project goes forward. It is like a site plan where we can continue to negotiate it. This is very important because once we set those conditions, we have to stick with them, because the neighborhoods have said years ago, yes, this is okay. We're okay with this idea of adding these really big new buildings, provided that it's going to be done to keep our current residents here. That's at 60% of AMI, which is not a number that was brought out because of some social experiment, but it's simply a measure of the affordability that is on the pike at the time that the plan was made. That's what we're seeking to keep. It is a goal of the neighborhood plan to promote affordable home ownership at some rates that are a little bit higher, because you need to make more to be able to afford it. However, the density incentive was not applied to those income levels. It was a conscious choice not to do it. And changing it now would be changing really the structure of the entire deal. As we go forward looking at this on which should be on a county-wide basis, we have to make sure that the first check of any kind of policy is what would the effect be on the current built environment. Here, the effect would be, could be displacement of large numbers of people who we have worked very hard to keep on the pike, because they are part of what makes the pike such a wonderful place to live. So thank you very much. I agree with the deferral and look forward to working with the county on the next steps for home ownership.
Thank you, Mr. Snyder.
Our next speaker is Audrey Clement, followed by Stephanie Pryor.
Hello, do you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Okay. I'm Audrey Clement, independent candidate for county board. And welcome members of the staff and the county manager. First, I want to thank staff for recommending indefinite deferral of item 47, which would amend the Pike Neighborhood Form-Based Code to adjust area median income limits for affordable home ownership units from 60% of AMI to 80 to 100% of AMI. Unlike others who have objected to the proposed amendment on the merits, I'm objecting to its lack of clarity. Specifically, I want to know if its adoption would result in condo conversion of existing rental properties on the pike. At a September 15th, 2020 virtual court meeting, that's the Coalition of Condo Owners and Renters, an Arlington housing planner dismissed my concern out of hand, saying that the form-based code applies only to new construction. He stated that existing by-right rental properties on the pike are already eligible for condo conversion by their owners, irrespective of the form-based code or the proposed amendment to it. Yet we have heard repeated testimony from community leaders up, down, and off the pike that the form-based code amendment would enable condo conversions beyond the affordability of the majority of renters on the pike, resulting in their displacement therefrom. If displacement via the form-based code is not going to happen, would housing construction under it induce conversion of existing by-right rental properties into condos? If so, how would that market mechanism work? Regarding condo conversions, the original staff report on item 47, which was provided to the Planning Commission on October the 5th, and which has since been removed from the county board meeting website, stated, finally, staff also recommends amending the form-based code to stipulate how affordable rental units originally approved in construction under the code would be treated in the event the property owner decides to convert the building to an ownership condominium structure before the conclusion of the rental project's 30-year affordability term, end of quote. So which is it? Does this amendment enable condo conversion of existing Pike rentals, or does it not? Until staff provides a clear answer to this question, it simply isn't possible for county board or anyone else to make an informed decision about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Clement.
Our next speaker is Stephanie Pryor, followed by Dan Schuler.
Hi, this is Steph. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Stephanie Pryor. I was horrified when I read in the report that staff wants to better align the neighborhood's form-based code with the overall cost of home ownership within the county. County board and staff both tout Columbia Pike's diversity of languages, countries, cultures. However, we also drag down the overall county AMI. We're at just $85,000, which is below the rest of the county. By using county standards, you're destroying the very diversity you claim to support. I was very relieved to see the removal of this particular proposal. However, in your significant and long-term role as county board, I'm still testifying. I provided additional materials to help inform future housing efforts. I'm also concerned that staff left out key information from the initial report. Like John, I participated actively in the Form-Based Code Neighborhoods Plan. I and others pushed for 40% AMI levels because that rate covers our junior art bus drivers. I'm also known for my repeated question, why should my mother on Social Security subsidize someone making $100,000 a year? Housing and Form-Based Code staff can testify to my passion and sometimes anger. My family background ranges from working poor to middle class. My aunt was a bartender and a waitress, another aunt a school teacher, one cousin's a bus driver, another one a police driver, and a third one is a cleaner at a nursing home. I'm proud to be a supervisor to immigrants from Vietnam, India, and also Ethiopia, some of whom I hired personally. English is not their first language. The many aspects of diversity are very important to me. I sent you charts showing economic disparities across racial, ethnic, and cultural differences by income level. This supports our claims that increased income limits would hasten the loss of racial, economic, and ethnic diversity. African American average household income is roughly 50%. Hispanic ethnicity income also lower than Caucasian. This is not unique to Arlington. County staff referenced area programs as part of their basis for the increased income level. What they did not clearly show is just how many restrictions were added for those maximum income levels. For example, you must live or work in the county, you must live in the house, you cannot own another property, cannot be a full-time student, and much more. Loudoun also supports repairing of existing properties for different income levels. Some of those concerns for ability to game the system were raised earlier in 2020. The common thread of the affordable housing program from our neighbors are not solely based on income. Someone might make $70,000, but there's other qualifications. Those cross-checks ensure the people who need the help get it. As raised during Ms. Moran during public comment, we have people already with these lower income levels required. I'm asking the county board to keep these complex considerations of racial, ethnic, cultural, long-standing income disparities when reviewing these plans and programs. Similar to our zoning classifications, go hyper-local with our very specific Columbia Pike maps, a national award-winning structure. County policy should be raised to meet our Columbia Pike standards, not push Columbia Pike down. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Dan Schuler, followed by Ann Bodine.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, good morning. Speaking on behalf of Our Revolution Arlington, we oppose the amendment under discussion. We agree with the assessments of many of the other community organizations that this amendment would accelerate the displacement of low-income residents from Arlington. The county board has spent a lot of time recently talking about racial equity. We asked the board to investigate why this amendment was proposed in the first place. There are many neighborhoods in Arlington that are within walking distance of metro stations and are zoned for single-family homes only. County's own missing middle study points out that this zoning is racist and was put in place to prevent Black families from moving into white neighborhoods which are overwhelmingly white to this day. Why is redevelopment not being encouraged in these areas? Why was a low-income, largely immigrant neighborhood targeted instead? The other consideration here is the climate crisis. We must change the way we build houses. We must build using low carbon materials and techniques that minimize embodied carbon in the construction. And we must insulate these buildings in ways to minimize energy use to the point where they almost don't need to use energy. Every time we build a large concrete building with only code mandated insulation, we take a real and material step towards climate catastrophe. However, these are exactly the type of buildings we currently build in Arlington, and is exactly what would be incentivized by the proposed amendment. I'd like to reiterate what was pointed out in the letter from the Alliance for Regional Cooperation, that we must stop, absolutely stop, building concrete frame buildings, and that there are no jobs on a dead planet. It is the responsibility of county staff and the county manager to understand this. This is currently not the case and must be remedied. The county must also make it a priority to support legislation at the state level to give localities like Arlington greater freedom to write their own building codes. The free market has failed to provide solutions to the housing crisis and to the climate crisis. It will continue to fail, and the solution must be political. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schuler. The next speaker?
Our next speaker is Ann Bodine, followed by Julia Spain.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. My name is Ann Bodine. I represent Arlingtonians for Our Sustainable Future, and I thank you for the opportunity to speak today. ASF asked the board to approve the staff recommendation for indefinite deferral and review of ways to help residents in current homeownership programs. I would like to speak to the original recommendation, however, to go forward with a changed amendment to the AMI for the form-based code. We urge the board to retain the current eligibility levels for the Affordable Home Ownership Program, capped at 60% of area median income. ASF urges the board not to tinker with a 7-year-old policy that still has broad support from the immediate community. We agree with the Columbia Heights Civic Association, the NAACP, Mr. Snyder, Pike residents, and many residents of the Pike we have met that eliminating parity incentivizes condo development over rental units, and that this would displace market rate renters who live on the Pike now. ASF believes we should work to keep current residents, not deploy every tool to meet rosy staff projections of a greatly expanded 2040 population. Indeed, why would we eject current residents in favor of newcomers? Arlington has already lost a net 14,000 market rate affordable units, or MARCs, from 2000 to 2018. Incentivizing a further loss of MARCs is inconsistent with our values as a community and undercuts overall affordable housing goals. Should we approve an upward shift in AMI eligibility for households earning 80 to 100% of AMI, we would hear more complaints like those aired by Ms. Morin this morning in public comments. The higher density will raise land values ipso facto. This will make all existing housing along the Pike more expensive for anyone living there now. Some property owners will benefit, yes, but homeowners who are not keeping up with median income will struggle with higher taxes. Some will leave Arlington. ASF opposes any growth here that fails to deliver the kind of planning we expect from a world-class community. For 2 decades, our leaders have relied too heavily on market forces for affordable housing. They have dismissed threats to our climate and natural space. They have downplayed complaints over school dislocation, traffic woes, tree canopy depletion, and storm runoff. Any move to advance an amendment of this kind, indeed of any type of new density, must come with an accounting of the likely consequences for our schools, parks, roads, libraries, water and sewage infrastructure, public safety facilities, indeed services of all kinds. The Washington Post quoted U.S. Census data this week showing that 1 in 3 adults say it is somewhat or very likely that they could face eviction or foreclosure over the next 2 months. Those figures should give us pause as we discuss adding to displacement pressures for fellow residents who are struggling to keep their footing in times of COVID. Let's consider also the context of racial justice initiatives across the country. This amendment would land with greatest force in neighborhoods, Arlington View, Columbia Heights, Foxcroft Heights, that are majority minority and are home to historic African-American communities dating to the Civil War. Moves to further reduce housing opportunities for these communities smack of new redlining, but more callous, as it would redline existing households out of our midst. Moving to take this up again in the review of the Affordable Housing Master Plan is not an option. That would break the promise of form-based code, embedding Pike policy into the broader plan for the county instead of retaining it as a safe harbor for market rate affordables. In conclusion, ASF asked the board, in the same spirit you showed in approving agenda items 31 and 32, to maintain bonus density as currently stipulated under the form-based code, keeping parity between programs for rental and homeowner units, to reject any proposed increases in density that are not accompanied by site-specific quantitative assessments of the impacts on the county budget, on the environment, and on income inequality, to provide ways to help households at 60% of AMI cover HOI and repairs to the homes that staff have highlighted as problems with the current program, to reiterate the county government's commitment to protect residents who are here and who were given some protections as part of the form-based code, and who might even be facing eviction today were it not for temporary federal protections that will expire in December. ASF would support the board in any and all of the above measures. Thank you so much for your consideration.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Julie Spain, followed by our final speaker, Julie Hisney.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. My name is Julius D. Spain Sr. I'm president of Arlington Branch NAACP here in Arlington, Virginia, and regional vice president, Region 3 North for the Virginia State Conference of the NAACP. As elected leaders, you have a moral and fiduciary responsibility to protect our vulnerable communities and families along the Columbia Pike Corridor from discriminatory and predatory market behavior and targeting of minority neighborhoods throughout Arlington. At the national and the state level of the NAACP, we advocate for access to affordable housing, we combat housing discrimination, and we fight hard to eliminate restrictive housing practices in public and private housing and lending. In that role, I'm here to express the NAACP opposition to amend the form-based housing code to increase Columbia Pike density and to raise eligibility levels for those programs to admit folks who are essentially upper middle class. Approval of the proposed amendment, I know we are it's indefinite right now, but what it would have done is accelerated gentrification and displacement along Columbia Pike. I think many people have seen that and noticed it. It uses outdated metrics and analysis, and it fails to consider the seismic shift that Amazon HQ2 will have on our county's housing and rental market. You've heard a lot about our opposition, but I want to take some of this time to talk to you and inform you at the board that we first need to clean up our act on Columbia Pike. Note, in 2014, the board approved a $16.5 million affordable housing investment fund loan to help HAC, who is a nonprofit affordable housing developer, purchase the Serrano Apartments at 5535 Columbia Pike. So we have low income Black and Latino residents of the Serrano Columbia Pike, and they've been complaining to the board and the housing staff about the conditions. And as a condition of one of those, that AHIF loan, AHC agreed that 196 of those units will become committed affordable units. We have some issues going on along the pike. And if I was to quote Chair Jay Brissett back in 2014, he said the board is committed to preserving affordable housing along Columbia Pike, and that the loan at that time is in keeping with the commitment, and that the units will remain affordable for generations of Arlingtonians and help preserve the Pike's rich diversity. I'm here to tell you again, it's appalling right now what's going on at the Serrano, and I urge the county board members to go take a look at it. We have some of our most vulnerable units, residents living there. And the question that a lot of people are asking, is there too cozy of a relationship with so-called affordable housing developers and staff? And are our vulnerable populations truly benefiting from the millions of dollars of taxpayer dollars being funneled through developers? The residents of the Serrano would certainly say, no, they are not benefiting. So with all that you've heard this morning, I just urge you right now to look at our affordable housing. Go look at the Serrano, look into that. I saw photos yesterday. We have mold issues, living conditions are slummish. And these are our current affordable housing units in Arlington along the pike. So with that being said, thank you for your time and attention this morning. The NAACP look forward to working with the county board, the staff, and moving forward. We don't want to always agitate, but we are here fighting on behalf of all residents here in Arlington. So thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you, Mr. Spain.
Our next speaker is Juliet Hisney.
Good morning. My name is Juliet Hisney. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful. I'm here this morning on behalf of the Columbia Heights Civic Association. We are very relieved about the indefinite deferral of this item. We have written in and we have done a lot of analysis on this proposal. I want to make a few points and then move on to a couple of graphics that I prepared, a kind of analysis that was not done by staff. First, we believe that this proposal, by promoting displacement, breaks faith with the community. As Mr. Snyder and others have commented earlier, we made a very specific choice in the Columbia Pike neighborhoods to avoid density incentives that would actually promote displacement of our existing residents. This proposal would also accelerate gentrification because if you look at the economic incentives and you see the delta between 60% and 100%, is that there's a big difference between who is on the pike and who would be on the pike under this proposal. Thousands of renters in our neighborhood, specifically in Columbia Heights, whose homes are marked units, may be displaced. And it is precisely those density incentives in the form-based code neighborhoods plan that is at issue there. We believe the risk to by right development has been a red herring. That has been a lot of the focus of the commissions and anyone who was supporting this and staff. And we have a number of NEF Connect requests, which includes to have a countywide review of the affordable housing master plan and looking at ownership, home ownership through that lens. We should not be trying to conform what we have in the form-based code neighborhoods plan to the rest of the county. It's impossible. This is a by right plan that has tremendous incentives in it. And so I'm going to move on to those. What you see on the screen is Dorchester Apartments at 2040 Columbia Pike. This is the garden apartments only. If you were to include the apartment building at the east end of that same property owned by the same family, we would have actually 388 market rate affordable units at risk. These garden apartments, it shows the conditions in this graphic of 289 market rate affordable units or marks. In green, you can see the by right allowable height. In light blue, you can see the existing condition. In the darker blue, you can see what the form-based code would allow without the housing bonus for an additional below the minimum contribution to affordable housing. And in red, you see what the maximum height allowable would be with the density incentives. 14 stories, 10 stories above existing conditions, okay? And 8 stories above the by right. I urge you to really have staff look at the real conditions for real properties that are at risk here. If we can move back to the actual form-based code, which was Exhibit 1, if you can pull that up, please, clerk. Yes, and if you could maximize that on the screen. Thank you so much. I did an analysis for my neighborhood. This is what you were looking at is the east end of the form-based code in the eastern subpart area. What you see is all of these hatched areas you can see in black and pink and then some striped areas. We went ahead and annotated these. You can see Columbia Pike on the upper side, that is Penrose. On the lower side, everything that is marked is in the neighborhood of Columbia Heights, excuse me. That is an area where every single building practically has this bonus height density. And you can see, I had spoken already about the 14 stories that would be allowable, between Courthouse Road, and you can see where the Dorchester Apartments are. You can see that that entire swath of the neighborhood goes up to 10 stories, 12 stories, 14 stories under the neighborhood's form-based code. We did not agree to this on Columbia Pike for the benefit of ownership units at 100% AMI or even 80% AMI. Many people wanted to limit the density promotion to 40% AMI, as was alluded to earlier. And we believe that this was a process that bypassed those people who are most vulnerable. Yes, the civic associations knew about this. Yes, we spoke with them, but the renters, they do not have the information that they need. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Madam Clerk, do we have any more speakers?
No, that was our final speaker.
All right, thank you. All right, colleagues, I think the conversation now is with the board. I appreciate your help keeping your chair on track. Would one of my colleagues like to make a motion? Ms. Crystal, I see your hand up.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd be happy to do that. I recommend that we. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I think just an echo.
I think there's feedback.
Yeah, I'm going to recommend, or excuse me, I'm going to move indefinite deferral of the consideration to amend, reenact, and recodify the zoning ordinance Article 11.2, Section 902, Columbia Pike Neighborhood Form-Based Code, consistent with the recommendations in the staff report dated October 15th, 2020.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Motion has been moved and seconded. Thank you. Ms. Crystal, do you want to speak to your motion? Get us started.
I sure would. I'm looking forward to a conversation perhaps about how we can achieve some of the goals, since it seems like this is probably not the right way, but the goals of affordable ownership housing or ownership housing for moderate income Arlingtonians. And if my colleagues will indulge me in speaking to this motion, I would just like to take an opportunity maybe to address some of the comments in particular raised by those who commented earlier in our list of speakers. And to facilitate this, I know staff has a slide because we saw it in some of your drafts, and I imagine you shared it with the community, about the demographic composition of who lives in 80% affordable or ownership housing committed to be affordable to people making 80% of area median income. And while they do that, let me just say this. I think it's worth pausing to talk about the goal that was motivating in staff pursuing this undertaking in this study. Because we want moderate income Arlingtonians who are disproportionately people of color to be able to purchase homes in Arlington County. One of the major drivers of the wealth gap and therefore the Higher Education Act and the gap and the access to opportunity gap and the income gap is that people of color have been systematically excluded through redlining, through restrictive covenants, through discriminatory lending and other practices from the largest asset generator, which is affordable to white people, which is home ownership. And so when staff has pursued the goal of home ownership for moderate income buyers, that is not only consistent with the board and the community's direction through the Affordable Housing Master Plan adopted 5 years ago, but it's also consistent with our characterization, or excuse me, with our commitment to trying to undo some of the systemic racism that characterizes life and housing and wealth in America and in Arlington. And so I bring this up to say, this is who we are trying to serve through our ownership housing programs. This is who lives in committed affordable ownership housing for people making 80% AMI. It does not look like the face of home ownership in Arlington otherwise. And so to pursue the goal of creating more moderate income ownership housing is to say that we are committed to combating that wealth gap, that access to opportunity gap here in Arlington County. To me, I think, and I suspect to my colleagues, the risk, even if it's small, of losing market rate affordable housing in pursuit of that goal, it so swamps this goal that I think ultimately the right thing to do is to defer indefinitely. But I really do take offense at the implication that our staff are somehow motivated to actively displace low-income people or people of color from our neighborhoods, right? And most of us live on the Pike now on the board. I don't think that's correct. And I think that this goal remains an important one. I think the right thing to do is to indefinitely defer, as I noted. But if we think that action does anything to actively further this important issue of racial equity and ownership housing, we're really misguided, folks. And so, the neighborhood form-based code amendment before us, I don't think is the vehicle to pursue this goal of moderate income ownership housing. I'm really interested in seeing us achieve that through legalizing alternative forms. I think that we now have an opportunity for conversation this morning that's been afforded by the recommendation to defer, to talk about how we intend to pursue that goal, which is codified in the Affordable Housing Master Plan. And I think we have a real obligation to address the racial disparity of home ownership, to serve this population of Arlingtonians reflected on the slide before us that is not served by our ownership market as it stands, and to, by extension, start to address the segregation of our public schools and our opportunities. I think that's an incredibly important goal. And so I, again, am moving to defer this item because the neighborhood form-based code is not the right vehicle. But we cannot let this goal go unpursued if we are actually committed to racial equity in this community, I believe. So I'll stop there. I think we have an opportunity again to have an interesting conversation about where else this goal might fit, whether it's in the review of the Affordable Housing Master Plan, the Missing Middle Study, or other components of Housing Arlington. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, you're muted.
The machine did it. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Dorsey, your hand is up, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I very much associate myself with a lot of the sentiment behind Ms. Crystal's remarks. I appreciate that many people here are concerned about doing real harm with displacement and gentrification. Those are goals that are absolutely aligned with where the board, where staff is. So proposals of what staff has put forward were certainly not with the intent of doing that. I want to make sure everyone listening in understands that. But to the extent that people are unconvinced that the proposal would produce those effects, I think there's absolutely the need for ongoing conversation. And I also think this really speaks to the need to have a comprehensive look at how to effectuate the goals that Ms. Crystal so artfully articulated about ensuring that wealth building opportunities are available for people who have been historically and disproportionately denied access. And I want to just underscore that we have a problem there at this moment. And it's a dimension that we haven't really heard a lot from the comments. When you look at our housing ownership program and the 60% AMI limit, what that does effectively is that workers who have experienced wage growth, and I know that there are few among us who have, but there are workers who are experiencing wage growth through either their industry or through their career trajectory beyond the increases in the local AMI. Remember, those workers are going to be better able to deal with the rising costs of ownership that are associated with condo development. They may be excluded from opportunity. And instead, what it will mean is that workers whose incomes are lagging are being suppressed, who are in industries and occupations that are not providing them rising living standards, they will continue to remain eligible. But if the condo costs, the ownership costs continue to rise, there's a gap that's going to put them in jeopardy. It's going to make it difficult for them to meet those ownership costs. And of course, if you can't meet those costs, you lose that asset, you lose that security, you lose that wealth building opportunity. And currently at this moment, we do not have a subsidy program to actually fill that gap, to help them on the ownership side. So we have to look at this from many different angles. It's the sort of forecasted effects on gentrification and displacement, but it's also the real term gap that we have with actually supporting ownership goals for people who are Black and brown, who've historically been denied, but who are also are fortunate enough to be able to actually afford rising home ownership costs if they get an opportunity. So I welcome this opportunity to take a broad look to figure out how we specifically do, as Mr. Snyder mentioned, do no harm, but also hopefully end up doing some good. And I just do want to underscore at the end, I know some people believe that it's a red herring to think about the risk of by right development. I don't share that viewpoint. It is something that is a risk. It's a constant risk. And we can't be blind to the fact that at any point in time, any of the marked buildings that currently serve people at the 60 and around 60 AMI level in Arlington, if market forces and owner interests align, those buildings could become condo at any time. There is no prohibition on that, at least as far as I understand it. So we must remember that risks remain. And as we continue this work of looking at all elements of how we might preserve and protect opportunities for home ownership while not displacing people, I hope we have some ability to do so with speed, so that we don't have these ongoing risks resulting in bad outcomes.
Thank you, Mr. Dorsey. Mr. DeFranti.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the solutions focus that Ms. Crystal and Mr. Dorsey have put to this conversation, because I do believe that moderate income home ownership is a critical wealth building tool. And so that's important. I think there's a couple of speakers touched on this moment, and I think it's helpful because perhaps not all the speakers have been in all of have gotten the glory of listening to every one of our board meetings. But on eviction prevention, we are doing a lot, and it is a shared priority of our board. We've helped over 1,500 families, and today we're putting more funding into eviction prevention. So that key need, in addition to hunger, have been central to what we've been doing. It's serving folks like Mr. Solomon and helping his household stay in their homes and stay fed that have been a big priority. So I appreciate that the speakers have come and commented in that way, and want you to know that we are working hard. It is a shared key priority of the board. I also want to thank Mr. McNair. Arlington Mill is one of the neighborhoods that we've been focused on because from an equity perspective, there's a lot of need there. I guess I would say that if we think about this proposal, I also think that it has not been an easy situation for staff. Having been on the Affordable Housing Master Plan group, 80 to 120% of area median income is written on page 22 of the master plan. For me, the homeownership focus has to be on more moderate income, because we can't fix every problem. And so I would align myself with some comments we received from the Alliance for Housing Solutions that focused a little further on the 70 to 90%. I think it's absolutely right to defer in this case, but that's where I start my thinking towards solutions. And I would, in that vein, just ask that there's in staff's original proposal, there's a mention of 60-day notice with respect to by right development. That is a policy piece that I think is important, because I am not, we have 6,200 market rate affordable units, or did about 6,000 market rate affordable units, and we do have to be very careful there. There's also a good proposal, I believe, on ownership, extending that for the life and use of a unit, which could be a launching off point for a tailored discussion of home ownership, which I see as, for moderate income individuals, critical to addressing some of the equity issues that we've been so concerned about. So those are a few thoughts. I do think Mr. Snyder had a quote that said, "This is about the affordability at the time that this was passed." In my view, the world doesn't stay static. In the last 5 years, things have changed, and we will have to address those changes. And so the place that I am interested in is in the Housing Commission's suggestions on policy ideas moving forward, and the analysis that we would want to keep working on from Mr. Haddock's that Ms. Hisney referenced. Those are the type of discussions that are going to get us to both helping those most in need with housing, often renters, but also for moderate 60, 70, 80% of area median income, providing that economic ladder so that folks can work hard and be teachers, firefighters, police officers, stay in Arlington and work their way up the economic ladder. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. D. Karantonis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to follow up on Mr. DeFerrante's thoughts and Ms. Crystal's and Mr. Dorsey's thoughts. I think they set the stage for what it means to defer right now. It means to go back to the drawing board and very hardly look at where our actual pressures and where our actual crisis issues are that we need to address with our homeownership programs. I couldn't be more sympathetic and close to the narrative of Mr. Salman, who spoke first. I was an immigrant myself. My household was a 70% AMI household when we landed on Columbia Pike. And the only way that we could afford to, to find an affordable place, a condo, by the way, and to support the purchase was through a robust federal program back then that supported our purchase and supported us throughout the first years of home ownership. So I know very, very well firsthand how an immigrant family landed on the Pike and could, set roots. So that means that we really understand, we have to really understand, and this is part of the narrative of Mr. Snyder and what Stephanie Pryor told us here. Yes, we struggled a lot to find the ways when we sat and planned for the neighborhoods plan, to find the ways to support the 60% AMI households. By the way, even back then, and Ms. Pryor referred to that, it was economically almost impossible to reduce that to where we wanted this to be, because we recognize that 40% households and 30% households and 50% households were ubiquitous. This is the part of the diversity of the fabric of the demographics we wanted to support on Columbia Pike. And we knew even back then in 2011, 2010, that it would be very difficult to support the 60% AMI households. One proof of that is that in the current code, as it is today, the expiration date for the 60% AMI support is 30 years. So about half what it would be under normal circumstances for committed affordable units. And one of the positive parts of the proposal that staff had worked is, as Mr. DeFerranti mentioned, to extend that for the life of the unit, which is an important improvement, even if it is not at the desired level. So yes, we have a lot of policy thinking to do. The fact is that, in my opinion, and I believe I share it with most supporters of a deferral, is that we are losing affordable housing right now. We're losing both rental affordable and homeownership affordable housing in Arlington. We are still in a completely, severely supply-starved market. We heard from Ms. Maureen this morning, a 20% increase in the rent. I mean, how much more of a red flag do you want to have? This is the alarm bell. And it's also, and this affects, thousands, and this is happening in a supposedly, weak economy right now, in a recession. Imagine that. So we know that zoning solutions have to be paired with housing policy solutions. So we need to go back and re-examine if our housing, affordable homeownership housing programs really match the challenge. We need to make sure how we support the 60% AMI family, a household, to qualify and then to sustain this homeownership under the conditions that align with our goals. I was specifically, disappointed and frustrated and alarmed by the fact that the 6 affordable units that between 2012 and today, and the cover homes, the 6 affordable units that were created, that were assigned to 60% AMI households, 4 out of these 6 are now in forbearance, mortgage forbearance. This is not a great statistic, and we don't have tools to support them once they qualify once. And then there is really a large hole, a donut hole, and lower middle class, if you want, in our town. These are these 80% households, 70% households. I do think that when we are reviewing the Affordable Housing Master Plan, and this for me was really the condition to even start to think about how we perform on the Pike, and how we align with the specific goals of preserving diversity on the Pike, of preserving the current residents on the Pike, of not displacing our neighbors. I remember very well, we had the slogan back then in 2010, no net loss, no net loss, no net loss of affordable units, 6,200. This was the number, and this is a lot. This is a lot. So in order to make up for this, we need still to find ways to incentivize development, actually, to produce the economic strength to support these units and these households. And that's now the challenge for one of the many challenges that we have to measure the performance of our Affordable Housing Master Plan against. So I look very much forward to the review of the Affordable Housing Master Plan. And then after that, we need to revisit and to see how well we are doing on Columbia Pike specifically, and how well we align with the initial goals of the community. Thank you. Oh, by the way, I wanted also to thank the staff specifically. I think that they had a very tough, narrow, but very tough charge here. They produced a technical solution that I believe we need to review with care. But there are a lot more policy issues that need to be resolved.
Thank you, Mr. Karantonis. One of the subjects that came up in our speakers was the Serrano, and I know some of my colleagues and our staff have been looking into that and working on it, and I wonder if someone would like to just speak to that a little bit. I kind of hate to just leave that hanging out there. Who would like to? I know some of my colleagues have been working on it much more.
At risk of putting him on the spot, Mr. DeFranchi has been shouldering a lot of that. I know Mr. Karantonis and I have also been involved, but Mr. DeFranchi has been particularly indefatigable over the past few months.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Ms. Crystal. We have all been focused on it. I'm really glad that you identified it. It's my one note that I had here that I really wanted to bring up. The Serrano, we have been in regular touch and have been working hard to address some of the concerns that Mr. Spain identified and that a number of residents have brought to us. And we have a staff group, leadership group that is both county manager's office and county attorney's office that is working towards a solution. There are some issues that we've been able to resolve. There are others that we haven't. I would say that it is the single building that I worry about. The residents in that building have been on my mind in this pandemic more than any other place in the county, because we must serve these residents well, and we have work to do to improve. There's a role for the county attorney and county manager's office to address some of the concerns. There's a role also for the nonprofit housing developer, where we need to ask for better services. Those two steps are critical. We're going to keep working on it. There are ways in which it's important for the board to seek accountability, and then there are ways in which it is appropriate, and our tenant landlord chair has asked rightly that the staff needs to take a leadership role, because these are areas where my expertise and our expertise is not in remediating some of the conditions that Mr. Spain alluded to. So we're working on it. It is not that is an equity issue that keeps me up regularly, and there's a short-term response and that we need to get to. But I also do want to say that I think it's fair that the Serrano is, there may be one or two other buildings across Arlington that are in as difficult a spot as that building. We are seeking to resolve them. I do not believe, I can tell you from me and colleagues who've been involved in this, there is no cozy relationship in trying to hold the nonprofit, in this case for this building, accountable to deliver good services to serve our residents well. So I hope that conveys, and I'm sure there are things that Ms. Crystal or Ms. Karantonis will add, but I do want to make it clear how burning a priority this has been for us.
I think that's right, Mr. DeFerranti, and I think just to be concrete about it, I would note that every one of the 20 units that had been raised as an issue have been inspected again by staff, following up on an inspection from, I think at this point, maybe 4 or 5 months ago, that the three of us have spoken directly to the CEO of AHC, as well as all of the executives there who have a ability to make this right. Expect near weekly communications from them about all of the steps that they're taking. It's an old building, and I think it's going to be a journey to get all these issues righted. I think it is fair that the tenants are frustrated with their landlords. I think they have reason to be, but I wanted to provide some of those concrete steps, and can assure you that none of us have any sort of financial relationship with AHC in the least. Our goal is to increase the number of committed affordable units in Arlington County, and AHC has been a partner in service of that goal in the past. The relationship ends there, despite the insinuation during the comments.
Thank you. All right.
Just
Yeah.
to add to that, Madam Chair, for a second, and I cannot, underscore enough how much Mr. DeFerranti and Ms. Crystal have been working with the tenants, with AHC. I myself, I've actually visited that, so we are keeping really tabs even in the pandemic, and with the tenants and with and physically in the building. There is a commitment, and I believe this goes across from the board to the county leadership to staff. We are really interested in quality affordable housing, not any affordable housing. We are really, really invested, and we take stock of how these buildings are maintained, how these buildings are keeping with our expectations. We don't approve money just for the buildings to be built or for the units to appear in a statistic and be available. We really are interested that these households, these families live well there. We think that this is the biggest bang for the taxpayers' buck, and we care a lot about that. And we know that this affects the livelihoods of Black and brown families, of a lot of Hispanic families. And these guys, by the way, Serrano is an 80% AMI, so that said on top of that. So yes, and we learned also. We learn, for example, that we have to, when we approve projects, when we approve support for this, for any investment in affordable housing, we have to look also at the maintenance and the ongoing costs and the ability of a company to produce what we expect to see there.
Thank you. All right. I didn't want to put anybody on the spot, but you guys put yourselves on the spot. I know you've been working hard and really, really appreciate it. Thank you. All right. I think we're in a good spot. Needing to deferring this is the right thing to do given where we are. It's been brought up in a variety of ways, and the tension between it's just there are economic forces that make it just practically impossible for a very popular place like Arlington County to make sure that everybody can live here, and we're determined to do that. And I have often said I don't think there's anywhere in the world that has solved this yet, except as example I give, apparently Vienna, Austria, where the city of Vienna owns something like 85% of the housing. And sees to it that everybody's got housing. So that's one of the issues. Ms. Crystal, I see your hand up, so I want to let you speak if you've got something you want to mention. Now you're muted too. You're muted too. It's just.
I certainly didn't mean to interrupt your thought. I was just going to add one more thing before we find our way to concluding.
Yeah, I will let everybody. I'll just conclude a little bit for myself and then invite any other comments. Sure. No, absolutely. It's such a difficult thing. So I hear this first, do no harm. We absolutely agree. One speaker mentioned, we should do nothing. Well, the fact is, I think as Mr. Dorsey pointed out, doing nothing puts us in a lot of danger. They're really doing nothing is not a choice if we want to reach the goal of a diverse kind of community and keeping the Pike a home for all different kinds of people. So this is a really tough issue. It's important that we all work together. I will say a few people have mentioned it. I hope we can continue to talk. If any community can do it, it's us here in Arlington. But I hope that we can really resist casting accusations and aspersions on people, because it just causes all kinds of problem. Everybody here is of goodwill. I really believe that, and we need to work together. So if there are disagreements, I hope people will assume it's over an issue and it's over fact and it's over some perceptions, not over any kind of ill will or misdealing. That distresses me a lot when those kind of accusations come up. All right, I think I will stop there before we completely conclude and get to, I think, Ms. Crystal, you had something you wanted to say, and I think there may be some other comments as well. Ms. Crystal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I realized I was so impassionately speaking about why we need affordable ownership housing that I didn't express thoughts about how I might like to see it incorporated into the review of the Affordable Housing Master Plan. Can you all hear me? I've got a frozen screen on my end.
No, you're doing fine, and
Okay.
You're going right where I was going to go next. So go ahead.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So
Yeah.
I really appreciated in the presentation the review of what the review of the Affordable Housing Master Plan 5 years on is going to look like, because I think this issue is so important. I think it is existential to an Arlington that is diverse and inclusive, which is why I think we all moved here in the first place. That we could probably update this every year, right? The markets are changing rapidly. This is the most important issue to all of us on the board, as well as to so many members of the community. So I think it was sort of a helpful reminder that it really is a review. We're not going to be necessarily introducing huge bodies of work. But it is also true that one of the top priorities in that Affordable Housing Master Plan was to, quote, incentivize the production of moderately priced ownership housing through land use and zoning policy. And so I just wanted to say, as we're reviewing that, to put a couple of markers down. I would really be appreciative if we could focus on, particularly with the implementation framework, tools that get out of the way of the creation of naturally occurring occurring rather than committed affordable ownership housing. I don't think that's impossible, and I'll tell you why. What feels like about 6 hours ago, but was actually only a couple, we just voted on an adaptive reuse set of site plan amendments. We were told by the developer, the applicant creating those condos, that because it was adaptive reuse, that the cost of developing them were less, that they anticipated that some of those units, particularly the smaller ones for one person, might be around, in the 300s of a purchase price. Well, one person at 100% of the area median income would be able to purchase that. That is a 100% affordable ownership unit, but it's not committed. And whereas I think committed is incredibly important in our rental market so that people's rents can't go up 20%, right, which Mr. Karantonis was reminding us one of our speakers experienced. I think committed affordable can have deleterious impacts on the ownership side because it can prevent people from building equity. And I was talking earlier so enthusiastically about the wealth gaps that persist. And if you commit the purchase price as part of a committed affordable ownership unit, it can prevent that equity to be built. It allows the next person down the line to purchase in at an affordable purchase price, but it prevents the previous owner from building that equity, which is so important for intergenerational wealth. And I don't think that we have pulled all the levers yet on creating naturally occurring, affordable to 80 to 100% area median income ownership housing. I'm really excited to see this pursued to the missing middle. I think it is probably worth some consideration about how we might be able to achieve it through the site plan process, or maybe in fact through the form-based code process, while being mindful of the incentives that could be unintentionally created, as so many warned us about the proposal that might have come to us today. So I am excited that there is a body of work to be undertaken, again, on that naturally occurring side. How do we get out of the market's way? How do we remove the restrictions that currently make the development of what could be more market rate affordable ownership illegal in most swaths of Arlington? So I think this is really part of the missing middle study, and I could imagine this being reflected more robustly in the Affordable Housing Master Plan, maybe more of an effort to really tie those two guiding planning documents, or in the case of missing middle study, together under a Housing Arlington umbrella. So thanks for the opportunity to weigh in on that. I think this is a discussion very much worth having. I wish we could have had it perhaps without so much concern about what this could mean for our low-income neighbors on the Pike. But I think it is certainly worth articulating what we hope to see within that provision and that goal. It's 2.2, et cetera, of the Affordable Housing Master Plan about ownership housing for 80 to 100% of area median income.
Thank you. And I was going to finish up with the Affordable Housing Master Plan, and we're going to figure out how to fold this discussion in there. And I hope have some good discussions going forward. Staff has done a lot of really good work. And I think we just need to take a deep breath and a pause and think about it a little bit more, and perhaps get into some more of the complexities of this whole issue, which make it so difficult. Is there anything else anyone would like to say on this particular item for the good of the order before we vote? All right, I think we're ready.
Maybe, Madam Chair, to support Ms. Crystal's, so smart land use, the form-based code actually produced naturally occurring new accessible home ownership. The Oxmoor Village starts at 300,000. So, and these would be units of comparable size to the preserved on Clarendon in Courthouse, today. So this is possible, but a stop had to be pulled for this to occur on Columbia Pike, and that stop was the additional density that the form-based code afforded close to the arterial roads 10 years ago. It took a long time to get there. So that's the problem. Time is not with us. So we need to find these solutions in an accelerated way, because the market doesn't wait for us. So we have to put some teeth in our policies.
Yeah, the market is not waiting. All right. All in favor of the motion before us, please say aye. Ms. Chris.
Aye.
Mr. DeFranti.
Aye.
Mr. Dorsey.
Aye.
Mr. Carantonis.
Aye.
All right, Ms. Garvey says aye as well. Thank you, and thank you, staff and everyone who came. It's a long journey here, but we're in it together. We're regrouping. I think that's good, and I look forward to some really good discussions, and where everybody assumes goodwill on the part of the other, because I think that will help our discussions quite a bit. We've got a lot of really smart people with a lot of goodwill working hard here, so thank you. Colleagues, we have one more, I believe. I'll check with our clerk, but I know I have one more item to bring up, which is simply a little administrative cleanup. When we were in closed session before, Mr. Dorsey had to leave, and we all, the four of us, certified, but there's a certification motion that has to happen, and Mr. Dorsey has not yet voted officially on that. So just for everybody's memory and those listening, Mr. Dorsey, I thought I would read the motion to you and take your vote, if that's all right. And
Please,
this was,
go right
this
ahead.
was for the closed meeting on, and I am forgetting the date exactly, but I'm sure
Tuesday of this week.
Yes, thank you.
13th, I believe.
There we go. Thank you. And I would like to move, which I did move, and four of us have already voted, that the members of the county board certify that at the just concluded closed session, the one on Tuesday, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements under Chapter 37, Title 2.2 of the Code of Virginia, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered by the board. It was moved, seconded, voted by the fours. We've got one more vote. Mr. Dorsey, how do you vote?
I vote yes, and just to be clear, Madam Chair, I left as you all were concluding the meeting, but just didn't conduct the vote. So I can attest to the fact that the spirit of the motion was upheld. Thanks.
Thank you very much, and thank you all. Madam Clerk, is there anything more to come before the board today?
No, there is not.
All right, thank you all. We will be reconvening for our carryover session on Tuesday, It's a beautiful, if chilly day out there. I hope everybody gets to enjoy it. Thank you all. Stay well.
And to
Sure.
vote, because today you can vote.
I'm headed to do exactly that.
So
I voted
please,
yesterday.
and from now on in 4 locations, right? So that's very important.
Good drop boxes. There's lots of good ways to vote. All right. Yeah. Everybody vote. That's a good theme to end on. All right. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.